Could probably get it.
Yeah, they give it to us.
I don't see any settings relating to it, so.
No, you have to do exactly what Nick said. You have to just basically render it out.
Right.
It's not too distracting. I just won't hover over them.
We'll just wait a couple more minutes for John to join us. Whenever you're ready, John, everybody's here. You're muted, John.
Thank you. So we'll call this meeting a CPDC to order. And Julie, can you start with the overview of the ground rules for Zoom?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Mercier, Community Development Director. With us tonight from the CPDC, we have Chair John Weston, we have Heather Klisch, Rachel Hitch, Nick Safina, Pam, Adrian, and Tony Diarezzo. This meeting is a CPDC meeting of November 2nd, 2020. The meeting will be recorded on Zoom and recorded by RCTV, as well as live on TV and then live streamed on RCTV's YouTube station. For those of you who are joining us tonight on the Zoom call, I'd ask that you please keep yourselves muted while the commission is reviewing projects and deliberating. And if you have any questions, there will be a public comment period towards the end. And you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or I can see everybody, so you could just raise your hand if you have something to say. And and we will acknowledge you when we acknowledge you. If you can please just state your name for the record and for the meeting minutes, that would be great. And then address your questions to the board. And we ask that you only use the chat feature on Zoom if you're having a technical problem, and you can chat me directly as the host of the meeting, and I will try to work with you to sort out the problem. Please do not use it to chat amongst yourselves. This is an open meeting and we don't want to violate open meeting law. So that's all from me. Turning it back over to John. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that, Julie. Let's start. The first item on our agenda is a continued public hearing for site plan review, 1310, 1312 Main Street for the Reading Animal Clinic. So I don't know who, well, first of all, Julie or Andrew, if you have anything to start with, or if we want to just start with the applicant, maybe Jack, or I don't know who else is here from the applicant.
I believe both Brad Latham and Jack are present. The applicants were before the Conservation Commission last Wednesday, October 28th, which was again continued for some further review by the Conservation Commission. I believe there's an email from the Conservation Administrator, but I'll let Brad and Jack summarize what had happened at the hearing.
I can take that.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack.
Yep. So we had a meeting last week with the Conservation Commission. To the rear of the property in the southwest corner, out behind the existing animal clinic building, the Conservation Commission thought there was a low-lying area there that might be wet. And our botanists had looked at that area. They felt it wasn't wet, but there's going to be a meeting this week between Chuck, some of the commission members, and the botanists to take a closer look at that area, and then we'll see what it is. If it's wetlands, I'd have to change the plan. If it's not, then it's still going to be the same plan. But we continued with conservation, and we'll end up having to continue with you tonight until we iron this out with them.
Okay, thank you. Were there other items that came out of conservation?
Mr. Chairman, there were a few additional items. They thought we should have a larger snow storage area. We show a snow storage area up on the front of the property. They wanted to see that enlarged. They also asked if there was going to be any fencing placed towards the rear of the property. I spoke with the owner. She's not looking to do any fencing at this time. So we'll get back to the commission on that. And also on the rain garden for the property, they were concerned where the emergency overflow was. It is kind of close to the abutting property line, so I'm going to look to relocate that. So those were the three items, but the major item was if there is an additional wetland that could change some things potentially as far as where pavement areas are and things like that. So that's the big one. The other ones are more minor that we can deal with.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Latham, did you have?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Excellent. I wanted to go over a couple of points that came up at the last session. That was September 14th. First was there was discussion regarding a shared parking agreement. We have prepared one and sent it to the town. It covers certain points. It covers the use of the common driveway between the two different lots. It covers the shared parking for the benefit of the northerly parcel over 1312. And it also deals with utility connections. I think that's in the possession of the planner, and perhaps it's been circulated among the commission members. We also have prepared an access agreement with the town. Town council reviewed it, suggested certain changes. It's now been approved by the Board of Selectmen. It covers three areas. It covers the utility connections crossing that 10-foot strip between the property and Main Street. It covers the driveway access, and it covers the walkways. And it contains three parts at the request of town council. I believe in the long term, the town is probably going to be considering conveying the feet of that strip to the abutters, but for now, this gives us the access to address the issues that were raised before. On the signage issue, the signage will be removed from the side of the building. That's the dog and the cat image. We may look for relief from that in the future, but for now, to get through the site plan process, the signage will be the freestanding sign in front, which is simply the carryover of the one that was in front of 1312. There'll be some directional signage that would be just to identify for someone on the site which door to go into. We have submitted a traffic impact assessment prepared by Jeff Dirk of Van Ness Associates. He describes the level of service being adequate, no inverse or adverse crash data. He does suggest we have a stop sign at the exit and that we make sure that the site distance is appropriate, and that's controlled by the vegetation in that area. I guess that Jack's giving you the summary on the conservation. So those are the major points that I'm aware of that are involved. There is going to be an animal control area, an area where the dogs and cats can go to the bath before they go into the facility. That's been raised as an item. There'll be a location for that as well. And I think those are the items that we had on our checklist to be addressing. We're not going to be asking for the commission to vote tonight. We would certainly love to address all open issues, but as Jack indicated, in case conservation comes up with some sort of a needed change, would like to still have the hearing be open with you folks. Thank you.
And the only other thing that I missed that conservation brought up is they were concerned with the amount of pavement on the site. Can everyone still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I said that was dictated, we really, but under zoning, we're required to have so many parking spaces, and we're only showing 2 additional parking spaces beyond what the minimum zoning requirement is. But they thought there was a lot of pavement for the site. But that's what the parking requirements require. So that's about it from their end.
I'm sorry, I was just looking at that, looking at the site plan. You know, would you, if the zoning requirements didn't mandate that, would you want that amount of parking?
The owner does, and I explained that to conservation that, you know, they know how their practice runs, and even some of the commission members, when they had gone out to the site, they could see how many vehicles were on site, even for the smaller building. I think their real concern, there's 2 parking spaces right at the entrance to the rain garden. So I think they were thinking if we could eliminate those 2, it would just add a little more of a vegetative strip between the pavement and the rain garden.
Jack,
It's something I'll look at.
All right, I'm just curious. Any comments or topics of discussion from the board? No from Pam. No. No. I see lots of head shaking no.
Well, I've got 2, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
The first is, I noticed in the plans that the assumption is that the old building will be a office. What happens if instead of being office space, that becomes retail? Does that impact the plan significantly?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
If in fact the use changes, of course, that has to come back before you folks for site plan review. The parking currently meets the criteria for retail use, however. One side issue, if I could, and to elaborate on that, is we do have a couple of extra parking spaces, but if you don't give a waiver for the loading zone, or if in fact the use does change to retail for the 1312 property, I'm sure that would then have to have a loading zone, and we really don't have extra parking or extra pavement as a consequence of that. So I would have concern if conservation tries to make us cut back the pavement area.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is, I know you said that the current sign is going to be used. I believe that's in front of the 1312 building. There is no sign that I can see on the current plans. So even if you're just moving it, should that not be referenced somewhere?
Absolutely, we could do that.
Okay, thank you.
And then you had mentioned a traffic study. Is that one that was submitted previously, or was that something new?
It was submitted after our last session. It's dated September 28th. I don't know if you folks have it or not. The town has it, but I'm not sure whether the commission members have it.
Should be in the drive. I'm sorry if it was added late.
Oh,
but it
yeah.
should be in there.
Yeah. Yeah, because yeah. Okay.
The major impact was to make sure there was a stop sign. That was his conclusion, and to make sure that the line of sight for the exiting vehicles are not blocked by vegetation.
Okay.
And the decision was updated to reflect those findings as well.
Thank you. All right. I'll open it up to any comments or questions from the public.
I see one hand raised
Oh,
from
there. Yeah.
CRS.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
Hi, sorry, I don't have the hand raise function. My name is Catherine Saversky. I live in the vicinity of the property in question. So I'm familiar with the wetlands and the area. I would like to ask to start, because I'm new at this process. I just heard about this construction, and I have a lot of concerns and questions, but I'd like to know, so I can stay on track for purposes of everyone, what is the scope of this commission? What is your scope of evaluation? What are your
Sure. Sure. So when someone proposes to develop a property, typically it's commercial properties where they go through what's called a site plan review. And that's where this board, Cpdc, reviews the development plans, not necessarily like the interior of the building, but it's more about the building itself, how it sits on the property, the site, how the site operates, and we make sure that it meets the zoning bylaw, and that it's being done in a safe manner with any impacts that we can identify. There's a whole list of sort of impacts that we look at, but we try and make sure that those impacts are mitigated to the degree possible. What is not in our purview, because I think this is where you're going, what is not in our purview is impacts to wetlands. And I'm gonna, basically anything that the Conservation Commission oversees, we try and let them do their review, and then once they have their review done, then we can look at sort of what's left. Typically, right, the site plan gets modified, as Jack had just said. The site plan gets modified depending on what the wetlands on the site are, or what the Conservation Commission concerns are, and so then we try and review after them.
Thank you. Yes, I didn't want to go into conservation issues if it was unwarranted, but I do have other concerns as well. I'm going to start off, I guess, rather direct.
Sure.
I don't have the printing of the plans, but I hear that some changes were made from the Conservation Commission. I don't believe the public's invited to the conservation meetings.
Those are public meetings. I don't know if they receive a notice. Julie,
They do in a butter notification. It's possible you might live near the site, but be outside of that radius that they are required to notify. I don't know that for certain. But regardless, anyone is welcome to attend an open public meeting of the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
And they're all
to
being
that-
done, right, they're all being done by Zoom, just
Yep.
like this one,
Yeah.
so.
Yes.
To that point, my concern is I am in a butter of the property the developer plans on building a neighborhood. And my direct concern is that this enlargement of the animal clinic is merely a small step to make it easier to build the development in question behind it. So I have concerns. Generally, how many, I guess I can, there are things you can't prove with intent, because we can only base our questions on what they're presenting.
Right,
And from what I can see is that they're presenting two very large buildings, but they provide no outdoor space or no outdoor runs for animals. So I have great concern that this is not being designed for a large animal clinic facility. And I watched the last meeting. I did not see what the second floor interior would look like, but I understand that's not within the purview of this committee. But I don't see animal clinic investments in any of the designs, such as the green space or a dog run. So my question, I guess, for the developer and or if any of the vets are present in this meeting, is how many animals do they plan on boarding in this 2-story building?
It's not a kennel.
It's currently a kennel. So I was wondering if they're increasing their usage. I'm wondering how many additional animals will be staying, because they stay overnight for surgery. They stay long-term when they're sick. So they will be there. That's the purpose of an animal clinic. And for 47 parking spaces, I'm considering the in and out of the animals with the intent of the design presented and trying to decide how are they going to facilitate animals inside a building with 47 parking spaces.
May I respond to that?
sure.
First of all, there are 2 buildings. One building already exists on the site, so there's one new building being built. That is, as was mentioned, this is not a kennel. This is a veterinary facility. So they come in, they have surgery. If they have to stay overnight, I'll let Beth respond to that. But the use is not changing from that which has existed on the site since about 1940, I think it is. So that's a continuum. This is not a first step to any development of any other site. This is a freestanding proposal, has nothing to do with any other land whatsoever. I think there's some misconception with that. I would be curious if perhaps the speaker could identify for us her address.
Of course, my name is Catherine Seversky, and I live at 44 Chapel Hill Drive. I'm in a butter to the property Lester Land by the drainage easement area that runs from Chapel Hill Drive to Main Street.
Thank you.
So
Can I speak? Can I say
there's
something?
oh, yes, please, yes.
There are currently no animals boarding here. We don't keep any animals overnight. We do surgery and we send them home. We treat them and we send them home. If they need overnight care, we refer them to a specialty facility where they do overnight care. We have no need for outside runs because we don't board animals. There would be no need for our facility to have outside runs. And I have no affiliation with the person that's developing anything other than my own property.
Granted, but he is developing the property behind. So he's the connection, maybe not the animal clinic, but I'm noticing
that's a different meeting. That's a different situation. That has nothing to do with this meeting or my property or anything else. It's a totally different.
The water drainage system that was discussed in the previous meeting, and maybe I'm wrong and I misunderstood, but it was discussed as being put in to facilitate the neighborhood. And that was the reason the new water drainage system needed to be upgraded to such an extent. So with the plans being drawn that were displayed at the last meeting, they're drawn already closed off on the driveway as if there is no house there. It's already drawn as if the neighborhood is going in. So that's why I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I can understand that. And I think that we were fairly, right, as you had mentioned, we can only address what's in front of us. And really would only want to sort of get into what's, any specific plans. But I think that we had discussed that last time in terms of sort of the drainage design and the requirements that they have for to accommodate an easement through the site, that access easement. And Jack, would you mind sort of going through the thought process on that?
Yeah, I think we're confusing some things here, so I'll try to set it straight.
Can I just chime in really quick? Would it be helpful if we showed the plans on the screen?
Sure.
All right. Andrew, do you have them to screen share?
I do. Give me just 1 second.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. I just think maybe it might be good for people watching at home too.
Jack, I think you can start.
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
There you go. Sure, that sheet's fine. So right now there's a gravel driveway that extends through the vacant lot, which is the northerly lot where the proposed new building is shown. That gravel driveway extends through the property and goes out to a single family home out back. The land out behind this property is a totally separate property, has nothing to do. Beth has no ownership rights in it. She just owns these two properties that we see in front of us. But right now there exists an easement to allow that single family home water and sewer service through this property and access. We need to maintain those services and that access until such point that the potential of a future development by someone else is put in. So there have been talks with the potential developer of that site. So we tried to coordinate our plan I think the confusion is the developer would like to run the larger water and sewer services through our site, which we accommodated an easement for. But as far as drainage, there's no drainage that's being combined between the lots at all. All the drainage for this site is self-contained on this property, and there's no increase in flow rates exiting this property. We need to show that pre-existing levels of flow will not be exceeded, and that's why we have on-site drainage systems to mitigate the increase in impervious surfaces and collect stormwater on our own property. So we're doing that. So the only thing that I think the confusion is, we're showing an 8-inch water and sewer main that, if that property is developed in the rear, would run through our site out to Main Street. But everything else is totally separate. The driveway would then, if the future site gets developed, the driveway would be eliminated and the drainage would be totally separate. So I hope that answers some of your questions. These are really two separate sites. And if the site behind us never gets developed, then the only change to this plan would be the owner of this site would run their own water and sewer service out to Main Street for the new building. That would be the only change.
So if I understand correctly, there is no additional water piping to the lot behind the vet clinic proposed in your plan. You're operating under your own pipelines.
We're operating under our own pipeline, and we're dealing with all our drainage on our own site. In the future,
there's no additional piping going in to, before a development is agreed upon in the other lot.
Right. We've made provisions in case it is developed. We have said we grant an easement for an 8-inch water main to go in and an 8-inch sewer line. But if that does not go in, then there'd be no reason to exercise the rights to that easement. And then our development here, the site development you see in front of you, they would just have their own water and sewer line out to Main Street.
Okay, so I'm sorry that I'm having a hard time understanding. Are you putting in the 8-inch water lines now or not?
Not now. Only if the development gets approved in the future behind us. The developer would then put in the 8-inch water main and the 8-inch sewer line. If it does not go through, then those will not be put in.
I appreciate your patience with that question. Thank you.
Sure. Turn it back to the chairman.
All right, thank you, Catherine.
direct.
So, other questions? Yeah, Catherine, it's fine. Yeah, right. This is a complex, I know right. It's a complex process, and yeah, especially right when there's these two overlapping.
Yeah, well,
yeah. And
so I'm understanding from this meeting that there is a minimum requirement of 47 parking spaces because of the zoning. It was kind of vague on whether or not the vet's clinic expected to fully use 47 parking spaces. And I did not really receive an answer on how many animals they expect to have at a time on the property. Could I get some general feedback on how many people coming and going on a daily basis and how many animals entering and going on a daily basis would be happening on the facility?
Let me take the first part of that question, then maybe Beth could answer the second part.
sure.
Just to clarify, we're required to have 44 parking spaces. Under zoning, we need 44 spaces. We're providing 45 conventional parking spaces and 2 handicap parking spaces. So we have a grand total of 47, but the conventional parking spaces for everyday use will be 45, and we're required 44. And then if
Okay,
Beth wants to address the second part of your question.
Well, I guess you just said that the Conservation Commission wanted you to cut back on parking spaces, but you couldn't because you were at the required amount or required minimum. So if the required minimum is 44, why can't we cut off 3 parking spaces worth of that pavement for the Conservation Commission?
You could, but as Attorney Latham said, for this development, we're requesting a waiver of a loading space, which is for large vehicles. And so we really don't want to limit that. And my drainage system is sized for all the impervious surfaces on site. And typically you don't want to try to limit parking right to the minimum. You want to have a little, 2 of those are going to be handicap spaces that will hardly be used probably. So that a parking space is 9 feet by 18 feet. It's 180 square feet roughly. It's not that big of a difference on drainage for a site. It's less than the size of a shed.
And then, Beth, do you have information about sort of the comparison between your existing use and the capacity of this other design?
There's really no difference between the capacity, what we're seeing in this current clinic with the new clinic. We just are completely on top of each other here. We have 3 exam rooms. We have 5 doctors. We are literally on top of each other. We have 35 employees. They're not all here at the same time, but there could be 20 people here at the time. And with the COVID situation, we're doing a lot of curbside. So people are here in their cars. They're not dropping off their animals as much as they used to. So parking's a big issue. I am all about having, green space and all that. This is a very small lot that I'm building on. There's just not enough space to have everything that we want on that lot. But I can't give you the numbers of the clients we have. We're open 12 hours a day, 4 days a week, and I think 8 hours the other days. We have 30-minute appointments. So oftentimes 2 doctors on. So if you want to do the math, we have surgeries going on. I mean, it's a very busy growing clinic, and we are way, way, way over capacity in this building. It's 2,200 square feet, and it's very, very crowded.
Thank you. Other questions? So the process, because I know that's going to be one of Catherine's next questions, I think. The process here is that they have asked that we delay making a decision on this until after the conservation committee, they resolve the issues with the Conservation Commission with that were brought up. And then at that point, we'll have another meeting with them and go over any other additional plan changes or anything else that comes up in between this meeting and that.
Thank you. May I?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Thank you. Just one final thing, because I know everyone wants to move on to the next subject since we're holding the vote. I would like to know, are all the plans that are being referred to and screen shared, are they available on the website? I'm not so good navigating websites these days. They've gotten so fancy. But can I access all of these plans and able to print them, or should I schedule an appointment with the town office to pick up a packet? Or how can I best achieve getting all this information and future conservation meetings?
They are all on the website, and Julie can tell you.
Yeah, so that you can, if you prefer hard copies, we can arrange a time to meet with you and give you a copy. If you want to look at them online, I'm just going to pull up, I'm going to screen share the town website, and I'll just show you how to navigate to where we put everything. Does that sound good?
That sounds great, but if it's putting out too many people, I'm
It's
fine.
all right. There's other people watching, so
we do this all the time.
Yeah.
We do this all the time.
I appreciate it.
So do you see the town website on your screen? If you just go to www.readingma.gov, and then at the top you'll see boards, and you just go down to Community Planning and Development Commission, click there, and then over on the left-hand side we have all the links to the meeting documents. So the information for tonight is right here, and like every time we have a meeting we update, we add another link for the next meeting with the new information. And so if you just scroll down, here are links to all the different applications that are here tonight. And so for this one, it's right here. And we have like a little summary of what's happening and what the process is, and then all the new documents, and it's uploaded in reverse chronological order. So the new stuff is at the top.
Wonderful, thank you.
No problem. And you can find, I'm Julie Mercier, and Andrew McNichol is here from staff as well. And you can find our emails on the website, on the same website I just showed you. And just be in touch with us that way.
Thank you. Yeah, I apologize. I think I left you a voicemail earlier today. I was the one that couldn't find email addresses. So I appreciate your time in showing me the site plans. It was needed.
Okay, no worries at all. Must have missed that call. Sorry.
All right.
John,
go ahead, Jeff.
I just wanted to add so everyone knows, we are scheduled with the Conservation Commission next Wednesday, November 11th. So that'll be online. That's a public hearing. I just wanted everyone to know that that's our next date.
Great.
That's a
thank you.
holiday, Jack. So I think if that's actually true, that's probably.
Well, I didn't know that.
Okay.
That's what they gave us. So they
That
said
would
their
probably
next
get
meeting
rescheduled.
after that's December 9th. So I'll have to get some clarification, but anyone could reach out to Chuck Tyrone, the Conservation Administrator, and get a firm date. But That's what they had told me. I'll check with Chuck myself and try to clarify as well.
I'll email him tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Can you tell us when the next meeting is of the CPDC?
Yeah, so the next regularly scheduled meeting is December 14th, and we can put this on at 7:30.
Perfect, thank you.
So did I hear a motion to continue this till December 14th?
So moved.
I guess we need to do roll call vote, right? Let's see. Rachel?
Yes.
Oh,
Like,
no
what
one
do I-
seconded it. Can you
Sorry,
second?
I'll
is there a
second. I seconded, but I was
All
on mute. Put me completely off.
right.
Sorry.
Rachel, yes. Heather,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
John, yes. All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Let's see here. Next item on the agenda, somewhere I have that agenda.
$531.
Yes.
Yep. Continue public hearing for a site plan review of 531 Main Street, ACG RE Reading LLC.
John, would you like me to start? This is Chris.
Sure.
Okay. We were last before the board last month, and we made some significant changes to the plan. The building height above the average grade has been reduced from 58 feet 8 inches to 47 feet 8 inches. The floor area ratio of the building has been reduced to 2.73 and is thus in compliance with the bylaw. The size of the one commercial space on the first floor at the corner of Main and Chapin has been reduced to 606 square feet. The number of residential units is 12. In compliance with the September 23rd, 2002 Parking Traffic Transportation Task Force, a 6-foot wide sidewalk is now depicted on the south side of Chapin along the northerly side of this property, 531 Main Street. And that's in lieu of the previously proposed formalized street parking space and loading zone. Consistent with the PTTF decision, applicant does not believe that a loading space is necessary for this project and plans to limit the size of all delivery vehicles to 531 Main Street and its leases. The gas meters have been moved to the exterior and rear of the building. The number of garage parking spaces remains 16. 15 parking spaces are required. In communication, Julie had a great suggestion. What we did is we moved the electronic vehicle charge system onto the lift, and we actually are putting 2 of those charging systems into the lift. That will leave the one regular parking space that theoretically could be used for the employee of the commercial space. There will be remaining that one additional ADA compliant van accessible parking stall. And as we discussed before, the new parking lift technology proposes to have 13 parking stalls, and that maintains the 1.25 parking spaces per unit. Let me see. The handicap space, the 88 parking space, 17.5 feet long and 10 feet wide, van accessible, with an additional 8-foot wide of abutting offloading space is depicted on the plans. The garage aisle width remains in the range of 21.7 feet for the ADA, and the EV, well, actually the EV's moved. So the regular parking spaces, so basically it ranges from 21.7 to 21.4 wide in terms of the lift system. And then the proposed garage entrance on Chapin Avenue has been changed from the 22.8 to 24. So relief is no longer needed in that regard. That was another suggestion that town staff made that we appreciate. You know, sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees, and they can, so that's helpful. So let me see. We still have the one street tree that's proposed on Main Street to remain. And there's still the other that's proposed for Chapin Ave. And we had previously provided memorandum and parking analysis. We have been working with Ryan, the town engineer, and we've had several meetings with the Historic Commission. And we've been, I think, working forward cooperatively with the Historic Commission in terms of some historic displays that we are hopeful can be viewed from the exterior along the residential lobby portion, in addition to historic paraphernalia inside the lobby itself. We're also investigating, we've had communications with Jonathan Barnes and the Historic Commission, also with Andrew, in regards to whether there's a possibility of the transformer potentially being either vinyl wrapped with historical depictions on it, or whether it could be painted. That's a technical question because Reading Municipal Light Department wants to, it's a special sort of paint on there for safety, etc. So we have to sort of investigate that, but that's an idea that we've sort of been throwing out there. And I'm going to turn it over to Rob, who is our team's architect, and he's made some pretty significant revisions to the plan. So Rob, if you would take it over and discuss your setbacks and how you're designing it to be in compliance with the guidelines.
Sure. I'll share my screen. Just let me know if everyone can see it. That working?
Yep.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, so just to touch on some of the things Chris talked about, just start on the garage level here. Not too many changes. As you mentioned, we enlarged the garage door opening to 24 feet. We moved the gas meters to the rear of the building now, so these are located in the back outside of the building to meet the gas company's requirements. Over at the upper floor, the floor above at the at grade, we have again the retail space stayed in the same location. We added 2 studio spaces here to get our unit counts to remain at 12 since we took off the upper floor. So we put these on this level. These units are very similar to what was shown in the previous scheme, and again, retail in the similar spot. Moving on to the upper floors. So the level 2 is again fairly similar as far as the unit layouts go. At the 3rd floor, we put the 5-foot setbacks in to meet the design guidelines. Overall, again, the units are fairly similar to what we showed last time. This unit on the end became a large 1-bedroom, and similar to the front, we have a 1-bedroom now as opposed to 2 bedrooms. But aside from that, it's very similar. And again, as I mentioned, the 4th floor is now gone. So the building massing has been improved quite a bit. So as you can see here, we have the Chapin side elevation. So what we basically did was we took off the upper floor. So now we only have 2 floors above the retail area. We brought the scale of this down a fair amount to make that more of a pedestrian scale. The aesthetics of the building are very similar. We're still having the clapboard and the reveal panel system above, but otherwise the aesthetic is very similar. At the front elevation on this side, again, similar aesthetic. We just brought this roof overhang down a bit to kind of make this a little bit smaller scale. But again, keeping a lot of the same aesthetics that we had in previous schemes. Again, same thing on the rear, just the scale of it got a lot smaller, but we still have the rear patios and balconies. So similar design, just a smaller scale. So looking at, this is the alleyway side. Again, aesthetics basically the same, just a smaller scale. Moving on to some of the renderings. So you can see here, by taking off this upper floor, the scale of the building is much smaller than it was in the last schemes, which we think, is a pretty large improvement in that regard. But overall, the design is very similar to what we had showed last time. We are showing some close-ups of the rear of the building, and this is the rear by the auto body shop, and then the front of the building, just to kind of give you guys a better idea what it's going to look like more up close in the farther away renderings. We tried to soften this area here by pushing back some of these windows to address some of the concerns we had of kind of a overbearing street wall. There's potential to put planters in there or something to make it a little more interesting. And then, we have a lot of glazing here. This is the entry going into the elevator lobby, into the residential spaces where we discussed with the historical commission about potentially putting some interesting historical facts and images in these windows so you could potentially see. So that's something we're working on with them. And then otherwise we did have a request for some shadow studies, so we put those in this package as well. But overall, that's kind of a rundown of the design changes.
And in addition to that, Rob had a supplement that actually showed the proposed design for the signage for the Chronicle, and Rob also added to that as well some of the specs and details in regards to the lighting system. So that's in the package as well that was submitted, and basically, Aaron, the team's engineer, has been in discussions with Ryan, the town engineer. Aaron, I know that Ryan's here. Do you have anything that you want to present to the board in terms of the plans and what you and Ryan had discussed?
Sure. Yeah, I think the most significant change was in terms of the stormwater. We increased the size of the stormwater within the garage, and we both agreed that we've got it to the maximum extent practicable. We're promoting quite a bit more infiltration than we were before, and we are both satisfied with the design. I think that would be the most significant change. In terms of the site layout, we've formalized the sidewalk along Chapin, and that's really it. The layout of the garage has remained the same since the last design. Except the expansion of the entrance to 24 feet wide, and all the turning movements in and out of the garage remain the same. So that's really it. Not much has changed on the site civil design, but the stormwater design, the capacity that we're providing for infiltration, we did increase that.
So if the commission has any questions, we're more than happy to try to address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I don't know, is there any questions from the board? Anyone want to start?
Yeah, I'm going to have a bunch of questions, but can we start with the gas meter location? I think you had a blow up plan of that.
Do you want me to share my screen again, Nick?
Yeah, if somebody could share that.
Okay, here, I'll share it.
So it looks like you pulled back the building wall and you're going to have an overhang with some column supports, and then that created more of an alleyway for these meters.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not sure you have code clearance in front of the meters right now, at least the way they're sketched up. And it
yeah, the gas company said we needed 30 inches off the property line. So that's basically what we're intending there.
Well, but 30 inches off the prop. Yeah, you might have to move that wall back because 30 inches off the property line doesn't give you 36 inches in front of the meter, which I think is the code required clearance.
Yeah, that's not what they talked to me about when I was on site. But even with that said, we have room to push that wall back a little further if we need. So if that's the case, we need 36 inches in front of that meter. We can match that.
Yeah, I think somebody should look at that just to be sure, so you don't get caught.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, we'll work out that detail.
And it looked like you had the bare minimum OSHA clearance between the column and the wall to get in there at 22 inches or so.
Yeah, we might have to open that up a little bit, but it wouldn't, we're pretty close to.
Okay, so I really would like you guys to look at that just to make sure you don't get caught and you have to find a new home for them or make some significant change. But it looked like you did have room to move that wall left.
Yeah, no, we have space, definitely.
My other comments are more architectural. I think I'll hold off on those until we hear from other people on more of the site planning stuff.
Sure.
Hey, Ryan. I'm sorry, Aaron. Could you possibly show the plan that you did of the meters?
Sure, yeah, I can do a blow up. I have, let's see here.
There's actually isn't there a better sketch than that? I thought, hold on, SKO.
Yeah, there is. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out the best way to, if I could, I'm going to try to share my, try to share my screen if that's all right. Where is it? Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay. Aaron, why don't you take over if you want to describe the plan and.
Sure, yeah, we just pulled together this sketch as there was concern about the access getting back here. So we just pulled some dimensions from building to building to show that you have 4.3 feet up near the transformer and down towards the bottom of the screen, 3.4 feet at the last meter. You can see the dashed line there is the building overhang line. The building columns are hatched right along that line. That's about it. Gas regulator is the first square. You can see the text called out at the gas regulator. So I think that's about it with this sketch.
So if it's 3.4 feet from building to building, and the face of the meter is maybe, almost 12 inches off the wall, how are you 3 feet from the property line?
It was 30 inches from the property line was what I was told.
2.6. Yeah, but I don't know. When I read the code, it just says 36 inches.
Okay. Well, we'll revisit that to make sure we're accurate. Okay. But we do have space to push that well back if need be.
Rachel, do you have comments?
I think my only comment was about the street parking questions. I didn't see them addressed in this, and maybe I'm just not quite picking up on it. One of the things we had talked about coming back to this is whether we were going to consider some street parking options given the retail establishment in there. So am I just missing this because I'm not awesome with the architectural plans, or is that being dealt with separately?
Basically what we submitted is what we had. I mean, obviously we had proposed a more formalized plan, but the PTTF basically decided they didn't want that on that side of the building. They actually made a decision that they would rather have less parking and less loading zones. They want more sidewalk. So we're sort of stuck. I mean, obviously we have the zoning bylaw with Julie's suggestion. We moved the EV space onto the city lift. We added an extra electronic vehicle charge that opens up one additional standard, regular parking space. inside the garage. So we are incorporating that employee or that staff for that commercial space. So I think that's frankly the the best we can do. We downsize the size of the commercial space. It's sort of one of those is what it is moments.
Well, right, for you, right?
Yeah.
But since we have two members of the PTTF here, can we get some insight into the thinking of the decision that would be the preference?
Sure, yeah, I can start and then Ryan can chime in and Andrew can chime in if I missed something. So basically, you know, the town is looking at downtown parking as a system, and we're also looking at the traffic flow through town. And there's a thought that, you know, there might be, it might be tricky to put parking like along Main Street in this location. And there's actually, I believe, a space, like if you're driving out of Chapin and going to turn right on Main Street, where there's specifically hashed off because sight lines aren't good for like the turning out and being able to see. So it's a little bit tight in this area, and there's a thought that, you know, this might be a location where a future study of having Chapin be a one-way might be something we would want to do here. So the thinking was, in the short term, have the developer put in a sidewalk along their property frontage. The situation right now, as I understand it, is that there's like informal parking along the edge of the current Chronicle building there, and there's not going to be room for a sidewalk and formal parking. And, you know, I mean, we went around and around at PTTF like a few times, and we had some different opinions and ideas, and it's hard to say that we should lose parking, even the informal parking downtown. But the feeling was have the developer put a sidewalk in and then put this on the list for future study. Did I miss something? Andrew, Ryan?
No, Julie, I think you hit it right on the head. It's a really tight area over there, and we just need to go a little north to mention what we had talked about, which is Haven Street. And there's a portion of Haven Street that is now one way after the downtown reconstruction was done. And so that was one of the thoughts that PTTF had, is that long-term, looking at the expansion of the downtown into the neighborhood areas, that this would make a little bit more sense to have the sidewalk in place and have the burden, so to speak, on the town to try to figure out whether or not that should be a one-way or what the parking would look like on that street, knowing that we also want to bring in that downtown streetscape a little further into those neighborhoods.
Can we look at the rendering on A3.1A, rendering number 2, or the Chapin Street view? Only because if you zoom in on that, I think you can get a sense for where the sidewalk will land.
Yeah, let me bring it up.
There's some pavement differences there, so you can see where about the width of the sidewalk and understand what it's going to do to the street. Yeah, right there. So if you zoom in a little bit, you can see that there's a slightly darker patch of asphalt where those cars are located now.
Right around here.
I mean, the sidewalk would be about there. So Julie, are you convinced that you won't still have informal parking now? It's just going to be pushed out another 5 feet?
There may still be informal parking, but I think it'll make that driving on that street really difficult. I don't remember if it was talked about whether there would be any signs about no parking along there or not. That might be something that we would need to do.
Well, we need to know what you people who have been looking at this as a traffic, analysis expect, because if we're just adding a sidewalk and pushing these cars out 5 feet, we're making it worse. So you're going to have no parking signs there. Right?
Or the one way. I mean, I think I see the owner of the Reading Square Auto here, and I don't know if somebody from Mission of Deeds is here like they were before, but I think there was some conversations about some informal parking rules about the loading for the Mission of Deeds, and the, you know, the movement of the cars for the auto body shop, that, you know, if anybody parks in that little zone up there, it will just make, you know, there won't be any space to drive past it whatsoever. So
Well, we can't make it one way right now without a study. That's for sure. We could definitely, this is a public way, right, Ryan?
Yeah, you're taking the words right out of my head. This would have to go to the select board, as they're the road commissioners. So any posting of no parking or any posting of any signs would have to go in front of them with recommendation from the PTTF. It's highly unlikely that this will be going to a one-way anytime soon, because to speak to what Julie said, that we would have to do a study on that.
I guess
I would say that would be recommended, that be no parking. Also, given the fact that if an apparatus or fire apparatus or engine has to get in that area, it would be tough for them to make that swing.
So here's my concern, and maybe you're just proving, Ryan and Julie, that this site doesn't work for what they're proposing to do on here. Because, you know, with 12 units here and a city lift system, which takes time to go and park, you know, pull your car in there and park, there will be a demand for parking out on the street in a couple of different ways. One is, you know, you're not going to pull your car in there and run it through the city lift if you're just running in, right? You're just, and two is if you have a visitor, right? If you, they're not gonna, right? They don't have anywhere else to park but along the street here. And so, right, like any other development, we do need to think about where visitors park. And right, we didn't really get a good answer on the idea of the commercial space using the spaces that are just under 300 feet away from the site. So the likelihood of anyone coming here to use a commercial space and parking across Main Street and crossing Main Street and walking down here, I think is not very likely either. And so we really have I think we have a problem here with regard to parking, because we're just leaving no leeway, zero leeway to park for anyone except for the 1.25 space, you know, spaces that are dedicated to the residential uses. I'm honestly, that's a concern. And as a developer and an owner, you've got to be concerned about the lack of parking in the immediate area. All right. I don't know how you get around that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, we meet the parking that's required by the zoning.
Yep.
In terms
doesn't mean
of,
it works, right?
Well, I mean, you would think it is supposed to, because that's what the town has decided that they want for their zoning plan. But and we are within 300 feet, but I believe it was one of the parking studies that was submitted either at the last meeting or the meeting before that. The expectation, as I understand it, was, and the understanding was, is that they believe that most of the commercial use that's going to be going to that 600, roughly 606 square foot commercial space is actually going to be primarily walking. I mean, it is a 40-yard development, and obviously it's supposed to promote pedestrian access. So, you know, anybody who develops any of the properties here in this location is going to have the same potential issues.
Yep.
That's right, Chris. And
size, you know?
if you remember the last few developments, we've been talking about how we're building this density that each progressive development needs to account for less and less resources available. And my concern, and I agree with you, by the way, that I don't think that the commercial space traffic is the issue here. I really do think it's the resident.
No, I don't either, but you add that on top, right?
It's not reasonable to not expect in 12 units that you need 3 or 4 visitor spaces at any time. And so, you know, where are those going to go? Those are probably going to try and park right there.
Sorry, do you mind if I ask a couple of quick questions?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm just curious, given the context of where we are along that section of Main Street, where obviously a development just finished up. I think it was 467, and they're in the range of about what, 32 or 33 units. They're not on a corner like we are, of course. So I'm wondering, I guess, what happened with their approval process, and how did they cope with a similar challenge? Because I got to imagine with 30 plus units and a lot more retail, that they probably had an even greater, exponentially greater challenge, right? They're like 3 times the size of us, if not more. So how did they cope with potentially the same parking challenge?
I think they had additional traffic, additional parking on site, but they also don't have, I guess my concern is more about, is equally about the likelihood of using your spaces in the building, right? Where they had the ability, right? You come in, you pull in a parking spot, and that's it. And the city lift system, although it looks great, right? It takes time. And I think the likelihood of someone that's not parking there for the night of going in and taking that extra time is less than if you're just winging into the garage and pulling into your space. So that's my concern, is that there are likely to be less use of the spaces by the residents themselves, but then you have loaded on top of it the commercial space and the visitor space. They did create, they were able to create a 1 or 2 spaces out front.
I think 3. I think they ended up with 3.
3 spaces out front that didn't exist before. And so, right, we view that as enough for the commercial spaces, right? To your point of it's supposed to be walkable. So yeah,
right,
even
right.
1 or 2 spaces so that you can pull over and run in and get whatever you're going to get if you don't walk there. So
yeah. So I do recall their parking layout. It was a bit challenging. It's kind of wonky. It's not just an in and out type of setup over there either. And I know that their loading setup was a little funky too, where if somebody was loading, you basically couldn't get into the garage. So I mean, it's not as though they're quite as smooth as just an in and out.
Right. Yeah.
We've got about a 20-second turn time for a city lift space. So I do recognize that, but we did also create an additional space, and 3 of the spaces are surface level spaces. They're not all city left. So we're actually offering an additional garage space that we're not required to technically be providing. Granted, what we had proposed was to add some parking along the street, but obviously the town is telling us that that's not possible, the town doesn't want that. So I guess we're a bit handcuffed in the sense that we're trying to create the parking, and hypothetically speaking, we were offering a loading space plus a parking plus an additional parking space in the garage. We would have been adding or proposing to add 3 spaces, which would be equivalent to what we're saying the other lot was providing for 30 plus units. So I do recognize the challenge. I do also recognize that most of the cars that are parked along that street right now are employees of the businesses that are existing in the area, and not necessarily visitors. But we know that that's going to change. So, I guess I would ask the commission what maybe would be a better solution, given that we are a little bit closer to that public parking lot that we discussed previously than obviously the other proposed site. I just, we're kind of in a tough spot where we're trying to create more parking, but we're being told we can't. So it's a little bit of a different situation.
I could offer that we could bring it back to PTTF for reconsideration if the CPDC feels strongly about that.
I mean, that's what I was going to push this back to you and Ryan and just say, you know, I know that we've just had a presentation about parking, but the solutions aren't implemented yet. So this seems, you know, these two things are going to happen around the same time. So we have to have a solution for these residences and this additional retail that doesn't necessarily assume that everything that's part of the parking plan has been implemented, but that is actually, you know, that's set up based on the conditions that we have right now, because we have no guarantee that any of that is going to get put in place. I mean, someday there's going to be more activity, and we're going to go back to the restaurants taking, you know, all of the parking from top to bottom during that time. So that lot in front of Christopher's is not a good option.
Right. And I mean, you know, from our perspective, we thought we were doing a good thing by providing that additional parking space that effectively operates as a garage visitor space. But even it sounds like adding one additional parking space that hypothetically isn't required doesn't seem to be enough. So, you know, I don't know what's the solution.
Well, let's think on that. Come back to it. Other thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, while we're on parking.
Sure.
How many spaces do you say the city lift is going to generate?
That would be, it would basically be 13 parking stalls with the city.
All right, so the 3x3 would generate 8, and the 2x3 would generate another 5, 13. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure you weren't counting that extra space, because it looks like they're two technically independent city lift systems, each one requiring an empty spot.
That's correct.
To be able to function.
That's correct. The 2x3 has 5, 1 less than the 6, and the 3x3 is 8 with 1 less than the 9, for a total of 13 stalls.
Okay, thank you. And if we could go back to the gas meters for a moment. On the SKO1, if what I saw was that the first, or the opening, is 1.8 feet on both sides of the column, was that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
So that to get in, you're going to have to go onto the other property. Is that what you're saying?
Potentially, yes. Well, like I mentioned before, we do have room to make that wider, so I think we can increase that opening so that no one has to walk on the other property to get to the gas meter.
Okay, because that's a very small opening, 1.8 feet.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. I guess. And while it hasn't been brought up yet, when this is all said and done, would it be possible to get a shadow plan of the new building with the new height?
Yeah, I actually included that in this drawings package. I think it was the last sheet of the original package that was sent through. I could bring it up too if you'd like to see it.
If you can, oh, there it is. Yeah, if you can for the group.
Yeah, sure. So solstice. So this is September 21st shadow study. So, you know, the major improvements, obviously we lost a little bit of shadow around basically these edges. When we
You've cut out.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so so I was just saying, you know, when we took off the 4th floor, we obviously lost some shadow along this sort of area for all of these different times of the year. So, you know, obviously we saw some improvement of the overall.
You've cut out again. It's very difficult to hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. So anyway, I was just summarizing that we, you know, with the 4th floor obviously being taken off, all these shadow studies improved. The overall footprints are very similar to what was originally submitted. But, you know, as was brought up by the neighbor last time, the building across the street is still gonna have shadow on it because we're tall enough to be over that building, which is fairly close.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question, and in addition to the parking concerns, and I don't know the answer to that, so I'm glad the task force will take another look at that. I like what you've done to soften up the streetscape, the street side, the main street side a bit. Different question. A few meetings ago, we discussed whether the retail space could accommodate, could accommodate equipment, hoods, etc., that would be necessary to have food service be an option if there were going to be a small cafe or something like that. Is that incorporated into this design, or does this
Yes.
not allow for room for that?
We did incorporate a shaft space for an exhaust, so that you could have a cooking space in there for the hood. That's basically this X area here.
All right, thanks.
That would run up to the roof, so we considered that.
And I guess I'll just say, you know, I do appreciate how you've softened up the Main Street side. I'm still really concerned. I don't know the answer to it about that long, relatively uninterrupted big length on the Chapin Street side. To me, with the renderings, which I appreciate you did, it's still, you know, very much the dominant feature on that portion of the street for quite a stretch. So, you know, I've been looking at this and I don't know if there's anything else that can be done, but it's still really big from that one view and very dominant.
You're talking about this
yes.
elevation? Or?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we've broken it up with the balconies and then tried to use different materials to bring the scale down. But, you know, it is a 4-story building.
So one thing you consider doing there, though, is the balcony areas that have the recesses. It looks like they're recessed on the.
Correct, they're recessed, yep.
So you could either darken those elements up or push them back further. You might want to continue that recess slightly into the brick below so that that's not a long face. But I think that's what's happening is that those balconies, especially the top one, in the rendering anyways, if you zoom in, you'll see that because it's not recessed in significantly, it's reading like a big long band. But
yeah, sure, we can certainly steal some space there and push those in to get them off the street a little bit.
But I think also if you change the color of the band, you know, across the face of the balcony, it'll stop the continuous length that we're sort of perceiving.
Sure. You can look at that as well.
So can we talk about the height? A couple of things. One is I see on your plan set, I think the top elevation numbers are wrong. They don't calculate quite right. So you'll want to take a look at that. Right, because you're showing it at elevation 158 or something like that. And I know that's not right.
Oh, these numbers, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the actual dimension itself is accurate. But yeah,
So,
that might have not.
Yeah, so I guess I guess first of all, understanding how you calculated the average grade. I guess, you know, so that I'm not, you know, beating around the bush, I'm still concerned. I mean, obviously you locked off a story, which is huge, but you aren't even in the ballpark, as I've said both meetings, that you weren't in the ballpark the first 2 times around. I'm still concerned over the height because the way that I see this, I mean, at one corner, you're still at, you know, 58 feet above grade, above the corner grade, right? At the lowest grade.
The lowest corner is on the rear by the transformer.
Yeah.
To the top of the living space is 49.
No, the top of the building. And so I think that's where we need to work that out. You know, the top of the way we define building height isn't necessarily to the top of the living space. So Chris, if you can go back and look at the definitions in the zoning, you know, we do include parapets in the definition of the building height. So what we don't include is like this, you know, the you know, elevator shafts or what have you, you know, right in the center. But when I look at this, because the way that you've designed this, you have, if you show a different one of the different elevations, you know, the building facade is right, it isn't interrupted in some of the, like in that, right, is that building facade is not interrupted at the top.
This is setback, this is setback, this is
not setback, right?
Stair is not at the
yeah, and so right, I mean, that's what we're looking, right? That's, to me, that's what I'm looking at, right? I'm looking at, you know, that's 58 feet from that grade to the top of that facade. Now, understanding that that's not the way we measure, right? We measure from average grade, and which is why I first asked for sort of clarification of how you got to that average grade. Was it the 4 corners, or, you know, like taking the perimeter and CAD or what have you? So I'm still concerned about the elevation, because, you know, it's still above our 45 feet, even at 47. But because of the way that the design is, to me, it even looks, you know, it's in some places it's another story above that, right? 58 feet. So, you know, I'm concerned about that.
I mean, we've met the setback requirements at that top floor. I just want to point that out. And yeah, we are certainly over the height. But, you know, in most of the locations we're very close to it or under it, depending on the grade, obviously. The only spots where we're really quite a bit over it is just at this stair area in the rear corner.
Or the front, I mean, it's 2 or 3 feet, but on the front elevation too, in that corner, right? Yeah, the one that you can see right there.
Yeah, we're slightly.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's set back quite a bit from the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is over. But it's pretty.
One thing I think you might want to look at, I'm just kind of playing around with it on here, but if you look at the rendering, the dark top color, I actually think is making it feel heavier than if you had 2 stories of a darker color and a lighter top story.
Yeah, we can take a look at that. Certainly open
Because right now the emphasis is really being punched by that dark piece. I think anyways. I mean, I just kind of screwed around with it and I thought it sort of brought the second story down a little bit when you change it, when you reverse it. And I'm
I
not,
see what you're saying.
yeah, something to experiment with maybe.
Mhm.
I think the front elevation, I think the massing is right. But for me, there's so much going on. Like, I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to break up the mass. You broke it up both formally, you know, with the actual setbacks, and then there's these changes in materials. And when you look down the streetscape, not that there's much going on there, but it's hard to get a single, I don't know, something continuous. I can't explain this piece of it. The massing is correct, but I think that all of the different materials make it lose cohesiveness as a facade of one building. There's a lot going on there. I'm not sure what the remedy is. Like the bottom is pretty continuous, bottom story and a half, whatever, and then you've got these three different pieces up top.
Yeah, maybe perhaps trying to improve the second floor with the panel system coming down. Maybe that's what's throwing you off, perhaps.
It's actually the right side of it just feels very seacoast.
With the balconies.
The material, most of the material and the proportion of those windows. I'm just not sure. I just think that somehow, now that you've broken up the mass, I think you could probably have a continuous facade there with the breakup in the balconies and maybe some changes in windows. Maybe that would work. I don't know. It just, to me, there's just so much going on there. I couldn't figure it out.
Okay.
And I think it's unfortunate. This is not your problem. I think it's unfortunate that we can't take advantage of the corner. That that bottom retail space can't like turn the corner and do something around the corner. You know, I was in Newburyport recently, and then like Winchester the other day, and they have all of these different little streets, right, where everything's happening, and we just seem to have Main Street and Haven Street, and not enough's happening on all the corners that come off of those main pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'd be kind of great if the commercial space had come down around the corner and, you know, down, shaping a little ways, because then the non-parking sidewalk could actually have been used for something. That's not on you. That's on Julie. Figure out the planning for downtown.
Okay, other comments from the board before I?
Yes,
yeah.
I've got one.
Sure.
Along the front where we see these three banks of windows on the street side, there's one that's lower that needs to be all the same height. You see where I'm talking about it?
No. What are you talking about in this rendering?
Talking about the door that enters the commercial space.
This door right here. You're on mute.
Pam, you're muted.
There we go. Okay. Here, those three, whether they're doors or windows, need to be all the same height. Yep.
Okay, yeah, this is a door, that's why it's a little lower. So that was just kind of marking that entry. So you're saying you'd like to see it up?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, we can take a look at that.
Yep. Sorry.
Okay, other comments from the board before I open it up? No? Okay. Comments from or questions from the public?
My name is Art Triglione, and I own 545, 553 to 557 whereas, you know, Mission of Deeds is located. And I still have a concern about the parking. If there is one space per unit that is going to be available, what will happen if a single tenant gets married and they have another need for another parking space, or they take on a roommate? Where is this parking going to take place? Right now, Mission of Deeds does not have a lot of activity in the parking lot, obviously because of the pandemic, but hopefully this is a temporary situation. And I shudder to think that visitors and residents are going to take the path of least resistance and park in that wide open parking lot. Also, Biltmore, the restaurant across the street, they park in my parking lot. We have to constantly police that area. And I'm also concerned that with that building, that fire engines are going to have a hard time taking the turn with the radius that is going to be taken away from Main Street to Chapin Avenue. So those are chief concerns that I have at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Art. Did we get any feedback from the fire department, or do we know, right? Right, we must know what those turning radiuses are.
John, I did take a look. In the last set we provided, we studied out that turn coming off Main Street to Chapin.
Okay.
I can pull that up if you'd like to take a look.
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
We just clarified too that the building itself is not cutting down the radius. It's whatever we end up doing with the sidewalk and or parking, right?
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, you can see, I mean, in this condition, the sidewalk is just being replaced in kind at the corner. And the fire truck has no problem making this swing. And as Nick said, the building going up to the property line extents won't have any effect on the turning movement here.
All right, thank you. I guess the other point that is, you know, that ought to be a concern of yours is on the parking. You know, certainly as we discussed before, you know, there's the parking, there's a parking required by zoning, but you certainly shouldn't be taking the Reading zoning bylaw as what you need to gauge demand from your development. Right, we tried to be as lenient as we thought we could, so that we don't restrict development. But right, you've got to market your spaces, and especially in the winter, right? There is no parking on the street, and so you're going to have to sell or you know, these units. And so I guess what is your thinking about the demand, or do we have that, of what the demand would be for units? Because right, some of these I'm trying to look through here. Some of these are greater than 2-bedroom units, right? You've got a couple of 3-bedroom in here.
No.
Change the mix. No.
No, actually, in fact, we've actually, in addition to chopping off that other floor, we've actually reduced the density by going from strictly 2-bedroom units, and previously there was some 3s in there. Now we've got 2s, 1s, and studios. So in fact, the density has dramatically decreased.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I still saw some 3s in there.
No. So that's why we felt that by adding that additional parking space that wasn't necessarily mandated by the bylaws, you pointed out, we figured that would be helpful. And we in fact end up with more than 1 parking space per unit. So to Art's point, there is actually more than 1 parking space per unit in the building. It's not 1 per unit. So and in terms of the market and what we potentially see, obviously this building, given the proximity to the train, we foresee that a lot of the tenants are likely probably not even going to need parking. But that's neither here nor there, right?
Well, no, no.
I actually really living here. And I live within a walk to the train during normal times. I walk to the train. I still use my car a lot. I would just say that in Reading, to know living in Reading, I would not assume that people don't need to have a car.
Yeah.
No, I don't assume that as a community as a whole. And I did live in Reading for 18 years, by the way, and I've owned property in Reading for probably about 12 or 15 now. So I certainly understand the community, and I certainly understand, this is definitely still the suburbs, right? Yeah. But what I mean is in terms of, you asked who we'd be marketing to and who the likely demand is, they likely will take advantage of all that downtown has to offer, and obviously the commuter rail and all that good stuff. And of course, right now, right, everyone's working from home, so it's less of everyone's thinking less about commuting into the city and going to work and going to offices than they are working from home. So
right, but this is you build this, is going to be here for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, so things change.
For sure.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add to that where, it is interesting to think about car use now. There's car use to get to and from work. If you work in Boston, you take the train. Car use is also, for running errands. We don't have the transit to run around and have lots of errands. And until our downtown, you can get everything you want in the town center. As I was listening to John, I was thinking, the challenge will be when people are running around, running errands, say on the weekend, and don't want to do the lift system, and they're just popping in, they're going to pop back out. How is that all going to flow? And I'm thinking about, okay, how does that flow with especially, say, weekend shopping traffic or evening or afternoon shopping and entertaining traffic? I'm just thinking about that. And then, of course, Mission of Deeds. But that I'm thinking about that flow and how one would live there, having some experience living that way.
Thanks, Heather. And thank you, Art. Other comments or questions? Jill? Hi, you're still on mute, so take yourself off mute. Yeah.
Yes, and when things get back to normal, a typical Saturday with the Mission of Deeds is pick up U-Hauls and moving vans moving in and out of that parking lot all day long. And then it would increase during the week as well. I had a question about the design of the apartments. I don't have the hard copy plans in front of me. My neighbor who had an emergency and couldn't make it tonight had a question about, was there rooms designated as studies? I'm thinking he might have mixed up the print And maybe that was labeled as studio. Do you have studies in your design of the apartments?
There are a few apartments. Sorry, everyone.
No, go ahead. It's likely a typo. They should say studio. Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you for pointing that out.
No, there is one here. I'm looking at it now that says study.
Yeah, there are some small rooms that we're calling as a study or office, whatever.
Yeah.
What he was had concerns about, that those studies seemed kind of large and that they easily could be converted into bedrooms, and which would increase the amount of residents and then wouldn't meet the requirement for the parking. I don't have the plans in front of me, but that was one of the concerns.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's the design is meant to reflect what we feel consumers are going to want going forward, and obviously what's happened with COVID and wanting work from home spaces. None of those studies have closets in them, so we're trying to avoid the bedroom conversation completely. It's meant to be an amenity for the unit, because some of the units did end up with some extra space that was a little awkward or hinky, so we did add some office space, home office space. Yeah.
So the concern was that somebody would convert it to a bedroom and then it would increase the number of residents and not fulfill the parking requirement.
Yeah, they're pretty small. I don't even think you could fit. I mean, Rob, do you want to pull up the
sure.
layouts? Because I don't even think you could fit bedrooms in them. Well, maybe some really small beds.
So this is a queen size bed up here. You could potentially cram one in this one. Wouldn't be very comfortable.
Yeah. Maybe a twin, a cot.
Yeah, a twin. I mean, you could, but there is no closet or anything like that.
Yeah. No closet, no windows.
Yeah, it would be illegal for them to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So there are balconies on Chapin Avenue. And they're going to be looking right down on us. And who knows what? And everybody puts all sorts of things on their balcony. So
we will have restrictions in place in their leases so that they cannot put stuff like that out there. We'll definitely address that, Jill, for sure.
Stuff like what scenario? Are you talking about grills or loose things?
Exactly. Hanging towels and laundry out to dry and all that crazy stuff. Yep, exactly. We'll address all of that in the leases themselves in writing.
Do you intend on being the what would it be? Landlord? Are you going to?
I think you're coming in and out a little bit. I can't quite hear you.
He's asking if you're going to be the property manager, landlord.
I mean, that would be the intention. Yeah. Hopefully, right? If we get approved.
Okay. Then I have concerns. Are there going to be any restrictions on where the work people will be parking? I mean, the construction, the work.
I think we did address pre-construction meeting in the last hearing or the hearing before that. So I think we did talk about construction logistics and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And what was the outcome?
Well, I think, Julie, did you say that part of the process, we're going to have to go through a pre-construction meeting and address all of those kind of questions and make sure that we don't create havoc? Because I know Jill has brought this up a couple of times, having been through this challenging ordeal on the street with a couple of different developments that have been a little bit more challenging for you.
Yeah, I mean, so we do have a standard like pre-construction process, but construction, operations and management and just keeping track and making sure that subcontractors of contractors all get the message about where they should park and what the hours of operation are, and like all the details is an ongoing challenge for staff. So, you know, if you have any thoughts about how you're gonna manage construction on the property that you want to share with us now, that would be interesting and good to start thinking about.
Rob, do you want to address that since you'll be managing most of the ongoing there with the contractors? You're muted.
Rob, you're on mute.
Yeah, we can certainly come up with a good system for trying to come up with the best way to make things work as smoothly as possible down there. When we get a contractor on board, that's one of the main focuses, construction logistics and all that stuff, to try to make sure the site runs as efficiently as possible, to avoid any sort of issues with the neighborhood. But it's just something we need to kind of work out once we get someone signed up and they can kind of look at the site and determine what they think is the best path to keep things to smooth operation down there.
Yeah, because we already are going to have more parking because of the businesses that are already in the area, which means.
One thought that I could, as we're just kind of thinking off the cuff, since I do own some other lots in town that are not currently developed, I could always have contractors park down the street and we could shuttle them down. So it won't be a problem for us.
That would be good.
Yeah, we'll take them right. We'll get them right off the street for you, Jill. Don't worry.
I guess I would just add to.
I think shuttling them to and from the site is going to be easier said than done. Lenny Polanski, who put up 3 units directly adjacent to Mission of Deeds and directly adjacent to Jill's house, they didn't think anything of parking in my lot. Having Reading Municipal Light park in my lot, not asking if they could have permission, leaving my lot a mess. So I think that sending them to and from another lot is going to be easier said than done. And again, I'm harping on the parking issue, but I'm really concerned about people just walking across the street and thinking they can get a free pass all day long.
Yeah, no, it's a valid concern, and you're effectively running a distribution business over there. You got a lot of trucks coming and going, so it's a completely valid concern, and I know that you guys got to get in and out. While I can't speak to whatever the previous developers were doing next door or down the street, I can tell you that my lot's right down the street, right on Main Street. Most of the board members are familiar because I've come up in front of you guys in the past for other projects, and I don't foresee it being much of a challenge. About half a mile down, not even. So I think it would be better than, I suppose, an alternative, which would be to have them kind of fend for themselves and figure out parking. So I think if anything, it'll be an improvement, and hopefully that will provide less of a stressor for your lot, and hopefully an improvement over whatever the prior contractors were doing with those 3 units next door or down the street. So anything we can do, and of course offline, as I've offered many times, I'm happy to talk, and anything that you would suggest or think that we can do to help, I'm happy to do it. So
just to chime in for a second, I've worked on a lot of construction projects that have had challenging parking, and the shuttle option is usually the most common solution. And they'll more than likely be a big contractor on this project, which I would be shocked if they're not familiar with doing that sort of thing. So it's done quite often.
Thanks, Rob. Any other questions, comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jill, and then Jonathan after that.
So in pouring a concrete slab of this size, I guess there would be quite a few concrete pouring trucks. Would it be lining up along Main Street or Chapin Avenue?
I would have to say, due to traffic on Main Street, they would probably be along Chapin. Usually they're in and out pretty quickly, but there would certainly be some disturbance while that occurred. And I would assume the town would require police details and everything to make sure, it's kept to a minimum. But during that operation, I would expect there'd be some disturbance, and probably along Chapin more than Main Street.
There'll be a lot of wear and tear on our street, but I did see that included in the plan was some contract availability for any kind of damage to the street. I mean, we're going to have a lot of extra trucks on our street because Main Street would be able to be used. Is that right? There's something worked into the plan. There's damage to the.
I don't know if Aaron, did you include anything for that? I don't know if don't recall myself personally discussing that scope. But
yeah, typically we carry a general note on the plans that if the contractor is to damage anything that's not in the scope, they're responsible to repair it to its original condition. But I would think that truck traffic, that shouldn't cause harm to the roadway. And if they were to damage the street, they would be responsible to repair it.
Thank you, Aaron. Jonathan, did you have a comment, question?
Yes, thank you, John. I appreciate it. I didn't want to disrupt the flow of the conversation about the design issues, so I was waiting for an opportunity. Thank you. Just from the perspective of the Historical Commission, I would just want to say that the owner and the developers have been incredibly gracious in working with us on issues that are relevant to us, and they've come to our meeting. The issue that we have discussed is what Chris mentioned, which is the inclusion of historic display photos or front page of the Chronicle. Just want to reference, we're appreciative of the fact that they're willing to include that. In the event that I'm unable to attend, whenever you get down to talking about the decision, I just wanted to add the comment that we would appreciate if in your as a condition of your decision that you included a provision to address that condition of including a display in the area. We obviously can work on the language in there. The owner has been and the developer has been quite cooperative with us, but we may not have the opportunity to work on language. So it would be great if you could include some language to that effect. We also very much appreciate the nod to the reference to the Chronicle, and would also like to have that included in the condition. We've had some discussion, as I think Chris referenced at the outset, to including some of the historical artwork on the transformer to the extent that's doable and possible. I know I've been in contact with our artist about that possibility. I haven't heard back from him yet, but I'll follow up on that. I just wanted to say that we obviously endorse that suggestion. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. And I don't think, I think that all the discussions have been sort of in support of including displays there in that part of the space, right? Where it's my understanding is it's not going to be how do I put it, functional for another use that would cause a conflict with that, right?
Correct. Yes.
It seems like it would be a win-win for everyone for that part of the building. So
appreciate that. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Jill, I'm going to hold off in case anyone else besides Jill. No. Okay. I just wanted to make sure that everyone else had a chance. But go ahead, Jill.
I'm wondering about dust control. I would imagine there's asbestos in that building.
We've actually had the building tested. There is no asbestos. We actually had it removed already when we bought the building. Yep. So it's already been mitigated.
And what about dust control anyway for taking down the building?
That'll be part of our actual application. We'll have to submit a dust control plan. The contractor will do that.
And I know when you take down a building, there's always a hose, as I have experience with next door.
Yeah, typically there is some water involved with the dust control plan. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And then another thing is the view from Chapin Avenue of the height of the building because of the grade. It just looks very, very tall from our view, the height. So I still have concerns about the height. And that's it for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Other comments? No. All right. I think that, right, there's a couple of things, certainly one that was left open, and that is the parking and the configuration along Chapin Ave. One of the items to address, right, Julie and Ryan and Andrew, you're going to bring that back to the PTTF to reconsider that, sort of the plan for parking along there, and right, it's a balance that we're expressing, right, that CPDC I think is expressing of a concern of parking there versus pushing parking somewhere else, because right, it's not that it's not going to happen. It's not that this building or this site, even if another building goes, another thing goes here, parking will be generated. And sorry, Art, but right, the parking, a demand for additional parking will be generated from this site. In where best and how best in town to address that, I think we need to think through before anything else is done. The way that I see it is, if you don't put parking here, people are going to try and park right in Art's space or further down Chapin at the best. Right, that's probably maybe even, I don't know where you live, Jill, but maybe in front of Jill's house. I mean, that would be the best solution. That not from Jill's perspective, but if there's a good chance that you then have people parking over on the other side of Main Street and then pedestrians crossing back in front of Main Street, introducing a safety concern there where there's no crosswalk. So we really need to think that through, because you can't just say, let's put up a sidewalk and it'll all disappear. So, but probably preaching a little bit to the choir there. So that's a concern, right? Nick brought up the concern about the configuration of the back and the gas meters, and making sure that we get that right. Also some discussion there about the sort of the suggestions about changes to the facade, or the way that that's broken up, right? I still have concerns about the height, and sort of want to understand how you calculated that average elevation. I've said from the time you submitted that I have a hard time approving anything over 45 feet, and you guys are still considerably over 45 feet. Other items that I missed. I mean, certainly I don't want to dismiss some of the items that Jill brought up, although those are more right in the construction phase, construction sort of management phase that we'll work on in we could work on in the approval site plan approval document. And certainly Jonathan's condition there, we'll make sure to have in the site plan approval. Were there other items that I'm forgetting? Just want to summarize items to. Is that all good? Can't believe I remembered all that. All right. I do think, with all of those things, I think we're still in a position that we will want to continue for our next meeting. Yep. We all right with that, Chris?
Yes. When's the next meeting exactly? Do you have any idea?
The next regularly scheduled meeting is December 14th.
All right, that's fine then. Thank you.
And there's a time slot at 8 o'clock that's available.
That would be good. Thank you.
So looking for a motion to continue.
Motion to continue for 531? Yes, 531 Main Street, ACG RE Reading LLC.
To what was the date you just said, Julie?
December 14th.
14th
at 8
p.m.
Second.
All right. Can we do this by a vote? Just everyone raising their hands, Julie? Aye.
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 I see Nick, Rachel, I saw Heather, I saw Pam, and myself.
Yep.
It's 5-0. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Julie, other CPDC type town meetings that I've had to attend, don't vote on that motion. They just continue.
Yeah, I mean, like since the pandemic or always?
Well, I would say since the pandemic, at least, because 3 or 4 that I've had to attend recently.
Provisions that allow for just like the chair to just continue things without a vote, without a quorum, without a meeting because of the pandemic. But if you're here and you're making a motion and people are watching at home, I think it's good to just close the loop.
Okay. Next item, a public hearing for a scenic road permit related to Sturgis Park Pump Station from Reading DPW. Is there do we need to read the hearing notice?
I can screen share it. 1 second.
I have it.
All right, I got it.
All right, I think this is all Pam. You're on mute, Pam.
Okay. Public hearing, legal notice. Notice of public hearing is hereby given Article 8.2.2 Public Order Scenic Roads of the General Bylaws of the Town of Reading that the Community Planning and Development Commission will hold a public hearing on Monday, November 2nd at 8:30 through remote and online measures to consider a request from Verizon, New England, and Reading Municipal Light Development and the Department of Public Works seeking permission to locate poles, wires, cables, and fixtures, including necessary anchors, guys, and other such sustaining and protecting fixtures to be owned and used in common by the petitioners along South Street and to replace existing and aging subsurface wastewater pumping station with a new wastewater pump of the same capacity and a backup generator within the existing parking lot at the southeast corners of Sturgis Park on South Main and Reading.
Muted, John.
Thank you. Is this all Ryan?
This is all me.
All right.
I'll try to keep it nice and brief. So in doing the pump station design, we had to locate let me just get this up and running here. I'm going to share my screen in a second, but we had to design for the replacement of the Sturgis Park pump station. And in doing so, we need to place a new pole in order to supply power to the new pump station. That pole would be, this is the existing conditions here, as you see. The existing pump station that you can see that's visible is right here. And this would be the parking lot right here with the driveway opening from here to here. There is currently the existing pole, I believe, is right around here. So moving on to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before you move too far.
Yep.
Where's the playground?
Oh, okay. The playground
is okay.
Right here.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
I'll go back up to the existing conditions plan because it's a little easier to see. And I do apologize that it's coming in very light grayscale, but I'll point out everything. These are the 3 main pine trees that you see there. Those are being removed. We were in front of Conservation Commission. They approved those. The tree warden also approved those to be taken down. We need to remove those because of the excavation that's very deep here. They will fall over. When you'll see the next plan, when we go forward for the proposed, I'll show you we're replacing those trees with at least 3 linden trees, if not more. We're going to place as many trees as we can in that park area. Let me move down here. Oh, went too far. Sorry, it's jumping around on me. There we go. I'm not going to stay long on this because I don't want to bore everyone with the details, but the new pumps will be placed here. The reason why we're placing these here is so we can utilize the old wet well and the old pumps, why we're constructing these so we don't have to bypass pumping that's above ground. It's important to note because we don't always want to run a pump and have to house it above ground for a period of time. It's very expensive. In doing so, the electrical cabinet will be placed here, as well as 2 electrical cabinets here. The reason why there's more electrical cabinets above ground is because we're replacing these with VFDs, variable frequency drives. They're very energy efficient, and they'll save on energy and for electricity and cost. The generator will be placed in this area here, backup generator, which we currently do not have, and we do need for redundancy. It's important to note that this pump station it was built in 1964. It serves probably about 550 or 520 homes and about 35,000 feet of pipe. So it's the 2nd largest pump station in town. And this is really the one that probably is going to make more sense for everyone to look at. So we'll just get right to it. And again, we're really here for the pole, for the scenic way. But I felt as though it'd be nice just to go over the whole project for everyone to get understand what's going on. The pole in question that we would need to place is right here, and that's so been determined by Reading Light and Verizon for the loading purposes. They need to actually place that pole there so they can come down with a riser and go underground to our control and power station. So that would be the location of the pole. Full disclosure, I will tell you that this pole was actually just because of a work order issue in Verizon. They actually placed that pole a couple days ago, realized what they did, and removed the pole. So it was there for about less than 24 hours. But that, I just figured full disclosure since we're in a public meeting. So currently, it's not, yeah, currently it's not there. They did recognize they made a mistake. They had another pole that they had to put in up the road, and they crossed their work orders. That's what happened. So they removed it. They made right and removed it.
So Ryan, what kind of pole are we talking about? Regular?
We're talking. It's going to be a standard telephone pole.
Okay.
It will be in line with the above overhead wires that are currently there, and then there'll be no overhead wires going from the pole to the station itself. Everything will be down through a riser into the ground from that pole. So this will be really the only change visually on that corner, on that street. The driveway entrance itself doesn't change. I know that's subject to the scenic way, but that doesn't change the opening. And it's really important to know that we do reduce that impervious area quite a bit. I think it's down about 415 square feet we reduced in impervious area for the project. So it doesn't necessarily trigger site plan review. But I just want to make that clear that this section here is the paved area. And then this section in here is more of a reinforced turf. So all you'll see is grass.
Great.
And these would be the three sort of linden trees that they're proposing, or whatever tree that the tree warden would like to see there. And again, the fence that controls the limit of work. There's a planting plan if anyone wants to see it. And I do have a rendering of that generator enclosure that looks similar to the Charles Street pump station. I think that you guys had looked at before.
Yep, we did look at that.
So I can skip to that rendering if you'd like to see
Sure.
that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Let me just, let me reshare the screen. And this would be the one from on Pine Ridge Road looking out towards South Street. So that'd be that generator enclosure, sort of the same plantings that we put around Charles Street, the same feel. You'll see these electrical embankments are pretty large because of those VFDs. And just to state, there may have to be an enclosure around these as well if we have to put an air conditioning unit in, but that has not been determined yet. And we're trying to stay away from that because we don't want to obstruct any views to the park. And then there's another view from South Street. And I would pay more attention to the rendering here, as this doesn't really show the reinforced turf. Actually is more down in this area here. They're showing, they didn't render this properly. Actually, it's cut in half.
I'm still seeing the same one.
Yeah, we're supposed to be seeing a different thing.
All right, let me stop the share and then redo it again. Sorry about that. Can you see that now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So the generator enclosure, that's what we're looking at. The paved area here, that's actually showing more paved area than that's actually being proposed. It's actually cut in half substantially. They didn't render in the reinforced turf. That starts somewhere around the vault and then comes up. So this will be minimized and softened up quite a bit.
Bollards in front of those panels, the VFDs?
Yeah, then there may be. I'd have to switch back over to the plan view, but there may be some bollards there to protect it.
Those are gonna hum, aren't they?
What was that? I'm sorry.
They're gonna hum. They're gonna make noise right next to the playground.
Well, the pumps are actually underground in this vault area here.
Well, the pumps are, but the
They don't make-
VFDs, they'll sort of vibrate.
Yeah, they're submersible pumps, so the motors themselves will all be down into the submersible pump area. So I wouldn't suspect that we'll hear too much noise. You don't hear much of a noise anyway now at this station. And these will be more control panels. And depending on depending on the fans that are in those to keep them cool, that's what you might hear, but they're quiet.
That's a gas generator.
This is a natural gas generator. Gas company will be extending a line straight through. Would you like me to go back to the plan set?
I think that was a question for you, Nick.
No, I'm all set.
All right.
What are you gonna do? You're gonna tell them no?
Yeah.
I mean, when we were at the conservation meeting, they didn't know whether they were doing a diesel generator or not, and they're like within 25 feet of the riverbank. But it looks
Yeah,
like
no,
they're using gas.
I was actually not at that meeting, but this was actually always proposed as a natural gas generator. We don't really like to use diesel.
Yeah, now the consultant wasn't sure at the beginning of the meeting. They confirmed it at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, I was aware. And I might as well point it out, since we're in a public meeting, that this will be exercised probably once a week, but we'll do it during a time that's not a nuisance. Any questions for the project or for the poll?
Anyone? I assume the old pole is still staying? The one to the
yeah.
right of the entrance?
Yes, let me go to a new share here and get back to the wherever the plan went.
No, you don't have to share. I was just wondering.
Yeah, there's a pole over in this area. That pole has to remain because of the slack in the line, and then they'll be placing a pole here, which isn't in the rendering, but it's roughly in this area right here, straight up.
Okay. And I know you're reducing the amount of impervious, but is that going to remove the area, remove the effectiveness of having a couple of extra parking spaces in the playground?
Although we do not openly want people to park here, they can park in whatever spaces are available at the time. There will be reinforced area, so I would say they could probably park maybe 2 cars in there. But generally, this is for us to get in and access if there's any issues. We have to inspect these pump stations every single day, once a day, 365 days a year. So we do need access in here. But
Right,
for
I'll
the sake
tell
of
you.
what, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say, I've lived here for over 25 years, and I don't think it's ever been clear that that's not parking for people using the park.
Yeah, we don't, we certainly don't enforce it. We don't, if they park there, they park there. As long as we can get in and maintain our station, it's not an issue for us. And it quite frankly hasn't been an issue yet. So I would say we leave it alone.
Okay.
But
Nick.
we do have the responsibility of, reducing impervious area, especially with the MS4 permit being this close to the riverfront. It is a responsibility that we need to take into account here for this project.
Nick, do people park there for the park?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they park there. Sometimes they just pull over to send a text. You can tell. I use this park all the time. So, but there's no signage. I mean, there's a cage around the current pump station. Fenced area.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're only there when we're checking these out. We're there maybe for about 15 minutes. So we don't post this no parking unless there's going to be, unless we have an issue in the future, but we've never had an issue. But I wouldn't think it would be posted no parking.
Jonathan, I think you had a question.
Yes, thanks, John. Question, I guess, not really a question, a comment. Are you taking comments or only questions at this point, John?
Comments are good.
Okay.
Questions, whichever.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Well, yes. I'm sorry. I'm just a little bit taken aback because a lot of what Ryan has presented here we haven't seen, and I'm not sure how much of it, as he had indicated, may not be part of this public hearing, because I understood we were talking about just the poll. Didn't really understand that there was going to be any of this other new work, other than I knew that there was going to be obviously a new pump station, but we didn't realize the extent of it. So I guess the first comment that I'd like to make is that as the Historical Commission and I think the Conservation Commission are referenced as a party, if you will, to this. I understand it's primarily and only the decision of the CPDC. And I think that your regulations only require that the public notice be provided. I had expected or had hoped that we would have gotten all of this other information so we could actually assess in more accuracy what the extent of the change is in this area. So I just want to make that comment. The only thing we had was the original notice from, and I think some application from Verizon and from the RMLD. So we only saw the poll. This is a dramatic increase of the change in that area. And you can appreciate my saying that when I tell you that when the commission, the Historical Commission, considered the mere change of the addition of the pole at the corner, it was our position that I was going to indicate to you and will indicate to you that placement of the pole and contemplated auxiliary materials, whatever other supporting materials were included at that proposed location, would adversely impact the scenic features and scenic value in that section of South Street, a scenic road. So obviously what I'm getting at is, having come to that recommendation and that conclusion with respect to the pole, this is dramatic increase of the adverse impact on the scenic road element of that area. So it's multiplied by a magnitude of I can't even think of how much. And I didn't also know that the pines that were behind this were going to be taken out either. We were only considering, there is, and I know there was a pad there, there was a somewhat of a driveway area there, and I know there was a fence around a pump station, but it wasn't as enhanced as this is, number one. And number two, those additional pieces of equipment, Ryan, that you were talking about, and more important, that fence, as beautiful a fence as it is, dramatically changes the natural landscape that was there. To the left and behind, or in the area where that fence is, there's a beautiful stand. There's a gorgeous white pine there, and there's a very nice stand of trees there. So that section right there, which is basically the gateway to that park, did provide, I would suggest, and we would suggest, significant value to the definition of a scenic road, because it's not just, obviously it's the road, it's everything that is in view of the road. So this significantly changes that, and we just wanted to leave you with that recommendation, that we think it has an adverse impact. And we were going to just leave you with that and suggest that our preference would be that whatever electric support needed to be installed to provide to that pump station be underground. That recommendation is now far more changed because we think this is just a dramatic, it's basically an elimination of that scenic view. Thank you. I would actually urge you all to go to that area to see what it looks like now.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like Nick said, I've spent probably too much time at that park there. and understand the context there. And honestly, this is not, I've always viewed, I don't view pine trees, the white pines, as anything but sort of nuisance trees, because they are the first succession and sort of the thing to get through before you get to the hardwoods. And so never really saw this specific area with those couple of big pines as very scenic, and something to try and look through those to look into the park. So although I guess understand that it all works together, interesting. I see this as a different location in terms of adding to the character of the scenic road. So, but I understand your comments, and I guess my question to the rest of the CPDC is, thoughts on what Mr. Barnes had to say.
Yeah, when I went to conservation meeting, my concern was more that they were removing the trees, which provide a lot of shade to the park, to the playground area, but not so much that they were such beautiful trees, although they are really tall. So it looks like the gates on the front of this enclosure around the generator, and that's the access we want. We don't want it from the side of the parking lot.
It may just be shown that way. I don't think that has been determined yet, to be honest with you.
Only because I don't know if Jonathan's objecting at all to the the presence of that wood enclosure, which could be screened if the gate was on the right side of it.
Yeah, we're not showing it on this side, but that's not. Again, the placement of the it's an operational issue. So I mean, if we can move the gates, that'd be more conducive to a better view, then we'll certainly do that. But I think they're generally going to be in the front, because that's how the generator is going to be placed in there.
I mean, regardless, if it has to be removed, it's going to be picked, right? You got to pick it up and put it on something, and so that particular lifting device could sit anywhere.
Generators have to be above ground. To Jonathan's point, we don't generally put them underground, and this is for redundancy. So I mean, like I mentioned before, we have about like a 500 gallon GPM with 520 homes that this serves. So it's a pretty big station that we don't really want to not have redundancy on.
Just a question, because I've heard this, and I'm kind of torn with kind of the extra development that this brings. I agree with what John said, with all due respect, about white pines compared to other trees. But I guess on the generator, is there not backup? Is there not a backup system now? I got confused about that.
No, there's not. So if power goes out, we do have a method to bring a trailer pull behind generator in. But if you can imagine, we don't own that many pull behind generators. So if the power goes out, it generally goes out not just in one section of town, but the entire town. And so we have about 12 pump stations that we have to go take care of. And Charles Street was the first one. We have a generator there, so we don't have to worry about it. This one here, we're not only putting a generator in, but we also have other means of backup redundancy for suction lines and things like that if worst case scenario happens. But it's important that moving forward, we have a generator, we have SCADA, which allows us to monitor it offline without being there. So it's really modernizing this whole pump station to help the whole infrastructure, really. And this is all within the confines of the park too. It's not really in the right of way.
And who will maintain any plantings that go around the fence to make sure, I mean, it's a change of look there. Will it be maintained so that if there are plantings there, they're maintained well and look pleasant?
Yeah, it'll either be, you know, I don't know who it will be. It'll either be Parks and Forestry or the Sewer and Water Division. I would think in this location here, it's probably Parks that would maintain it, just since they're in that area maintaining anyway. But the thing is with these plantings is we're looking for low maintenance. I don't really want to be having to get in there and do any weeding and things like that. So it'll be plantings that are low maintenance, hardy, won't die from any snow. And there's a planting plan if anyone wants to look at that.
And so getting to Jonathan's basic point before he saw all the rest of the development from the pole, I'm just curious about the potential to just bring the wires underground. If the wires are going to go underground from the new pole to the system, is there any reason they can't go underground earlier so you don't actually need the pole?
Yeah, let me go back to the plan set and I'll show you why. Bear with me here while I find that plan. That would be the reason.
I can't zoom in.
What you're looking at here, and I apologize for these pop-ups, but what you're looking at here would be all the underground piping that's coming from this manhole here, coming into the new pump station, out this way through a valve vault, back down and around, and connecting up to the force main that comes under. We also have a culvert that comes across the street here. So to cross all this, we wouldn't be able to do. So the pole set would have to go here, and then everything goes underground from those sort of less dark lines that goes straight in a spider web of conduit.
So I guess the only question I have left, hearing Jonathan and the concern about the adverse impact, it sounds like pretty important equipment. What's the alternative? Is there an in-between?
I don't think so. The generator certainly has to be placed above ground. We don't really want to put it any closer to the riverfront. We don't want to put it any closer to the playground. We don't want to put it any closer to the corner because we'll have sighting issues, which we already have a sight triangle issue. So this has become a permanent stop now, which is effectively acting that way. It's just an official stop now. We went through a few iterations of the plan. I think that's the location where it has to be. Anywhere else, it doesn't become functional or practical.
Ryan, is this plan accurate? Because I'm looking at the generator placement. The rendering is very different for the panels up on the north, on the
yeah, let me go down. So that's the below ground. This would be the one.
Okay, all right. So it's just really
that's probably a little bit more accurate, Nick. So this would be the concrete pad for the vault. This is the paved area. The hatched area is that reinforced turf that's going to look like grass. And then the larger enclosure, that rectangle, is going to be basically the fence, the crushed stone on the inside, and then you'll actually see the generator pad, which is substantially smaller than the enclosure, but because of requirements for electrical code and things like that, it has to be, we need the clearance around there with the fence.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at, is that this plan and the previous plan are different. And if the electrical panels only take up what you're showing here, then you can get the enclosure around that generator. But on that previous plan, you can't put this generator enclosure around it because it looked like some of the electrical panels were in the way.
Yeah, and so CDM has brought up the fact that the VFDs may need air conditioning. I don't think they're going to, but if they do, there's a thought of whether or not that has to be enclosed with a fence. I've pushed them into the direction of no more fencing. I don't want any more fencing up there. So I don't think we're going to need the air conditioning unit on the outside of the panels.
Okay.
Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, John. I apologize about my comments, and perhaps they sort of have left a bit of awkward feeling here, and I guess I don't know whether it's going to make it more or less awkward, but I'm not speaking for necessarily the rest of the Historical Commission, because we didn't discuss this in the context of the other changes that Ryan has presented here. So I guess all I would say is just my own immediate reaction is that corner there, and I just took a look while you were talking of a photo that we took, Ryan, just after, I think you might have sent it around, of that corner after the pole had been removed that they put up there. And looking at that corner, with the stand of trees that I was describing, as well as the stand of trees that are on that corner, and I can appreciate and respect people's opinions about white pines, but my point is that particular corner was a very peaceful and serene natural setting of landscape area and trees. And I think from the standpoint of the scenic road language and regulations, that's exactly the kind of character that the scenic road bylaw and the scenic road regulations was seeking to address. So I guess what I'm saying is, given the changes that are contemplated, and I see that there's not any going back on that, and I understand that, but given those changes, they are so dramatic, I'm just giving you my opinion, that the question about whether or not the pole presents an adverse impact pales literally in comparison to the significant change in that area, in that scenic, natural, serene setting, so much that I'm not even sure that if we were to present that back to the Historical Commission, whether they would even have any concerns about the pole, because the other changes are so dramatic that it almost makes the discussion about the application of the scenic aspect of that becomes almost mute. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but I at least wanted to share that with you.
Thank you, because I got to the same place. I think, the poll is a poll, and yeah, it is a big change. And I guess what I'm hearing, is that I agree, right? That is a change from something that looked fairly natural, right? Even though there was a pump underneath there, right? And there always has been, to something that's not quite as natural. And I guess and I also understand, right, a couple of things here. One is, the control that we have right here is in the scenic roadway, and the only thing in the roadway is the pole. And that's A. B, that this work needs to be done. That for a whole number of reasons, right? That improvements need to be made here. And so I think it's sort of asking Ryan if there are other things that could be done to soften the feel of the infrastructure, right? And I like Nick's idea about whether you can change where the doors are, and so that you can have some additional landscaping along the side of the fence. that faces South Street. You know, I think that would be that if that's possible, that seems like it, you know, right. I think any little thing that might serve to soften it would be helpful.
We'd be happy to do whatever we need to do to soften that area. Again, I mentioned we had 3 trees there. We'll be working with the tree warden to place as many trees as we need to soften that area. I can go down to the planting plan just so everyone can see. You know, there is a large area around the back and the front, so the doors really are in the front. I can talk to see whether or not we can have those doors on the side and then plant in the front of that. I don't want to promise anything, but I will look to try to soften that area up as much as I can. Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to take away from the park area, but we're not changing the use on that piece. There's a underground pump station that's there now. We're bringing this up to standard and actually reducing our carbon footprint by going to VFDs. So that's important to know. So we're trying to make some improvements, a lot of improvements, I would say, to this area.
And Ryan,
that generator is going to change that look for sure, but it is needed for that station.
And is there space without interfering with utilities underground or the wires above ground to maybe even add another tree or 2? I guess it would be over on the Pine Ridge roadside, so not where the pole is, of course. I'm just thinking about, you know, additional softening since there's going to be additional hardening. I don't know.
You mean in this area over in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll certainly look to see if we can place anything in this area. I'll talk with the tree warden. I also want to really just keep in mind, I want to make sure I keep site distances. I think we should be fine if everything's planted behind this area up in here. Down in here, I don't know if I'd want to plant anything that's going to obstruct a driver's view.
Understood.
But to your point, again, this is a park. We are committed to leaving it somewhat nicer than it was before. I know there is a change, and we're aware of that. So I know this was just for the poll, but I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of what was going on at this project.
Thank you. Yeah, because I think, yeah, it would have been, if we had just looked at the poll, right? If you had just presented the poll and then this came along, there would have been other questions.
Yeah, and
right. So,
and that's why we sent over the full site civil plans, and you know, just so everyone could get a whole picture of what the project really was. That poll really is very small in comparison to what's going on at that project. So I just wanted everyone to be clear what the whole picture was at that.
Thank you.
Site.
Jonathan?
Yes, thank you, John. And I believe me, I understand what the difficulty presented here and what position the CPDC has to say, but just a brief reminder. I understand that the scenic road bylaw applies specifically when there is work that's being contemplated or proposed in the roadway. But I just want to remind the commission that the scenic road bylaw, the regulations, which to some extent may have expanded actually on the bylaw, the way they talk about the criteria for the CPDC to determine whether a road should be considered a scenic road, among other things, include, and I'm just looking at the regulations, whether the road contains or is characterized by any of the following: bordering trees of exceptional quality, et cetera, or are a significant part of natural or man-made features of aesthetic value, or trees which are a part of vistas paralleling roadways, or which create a frame of reference for more distant views, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to mention that what defines a scenic road isn't necessarily limited specifically to what's in the roadway, but what actually is in the vista seen from the roadway. It is in fact work that's being contemplated in the roadway and the degree to which it affects that, but the consideration isn't limited to just what's in the immediate roadway, but what's actually in that more extended vista, just for future considerations.
Understood. Great.
Thank you.
Understood. Thanks. So other thoughts or comments? No.
I'm Bob Wegel, son-in-law of Mary Avery at 277 South Street, and we were involved in the creation of the scenic road a few decades ago. So we're quite concerned about maintaining the scenic character of the road. And one question I had is whether there will ever be a walkway along the stream on the east side of the stream through the forested area, not through the grassy area of the Sturgis Park, but rather on the other side of the stream. There's a gravel roadway there that goes for quite a ways and then sort of dissipates.
In this area here?
Yes.
Yeah, the town did a bank stabilization project there last summer.
Yes.
And we cleared that area so we had access to stabilize the embankment. It certainly would be something worth bringing up to the Trails Committee or Conservation for a project.
This might require easements from the neighbors who abut that stream. Yes.
Yeah, and a matter of fact, I think the town actually may even own a great portion of that land on that side anyway.
It might, yes. I hope so.
So it may lend itself to a nice walking trail through there. So it would be something that maybe could be brought up with conservation and or trails to maybe establish something in there.
It would be very nice to have a walkway on this side of town. Most of the walkways are well to the north of town.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great. I mean, we're always trying to increase pedestrian mobility and things like that. So to make the park more walkable, I think that makes a lot of sense. I don't think it's in this purview of this project, but certainly I know there's a master plan for this park, and so I encourage you to make those comments when that master plan goes for public participation and questions and comments and things like that. But that's a great suggestion.
And isn't there currently a survey out for the open space and recreation plan? Maybe that would be a great suggestion to feed into that.
I was just going to make the plug for that, so everyone participate in it. And so those are great suggestions that would come up in that process.
So thank you. No, that is thank you for the input. So I guess I don't know where to go from here. I'm honestly feeling like right there is even though I understand that the issues brought up that there I'm feeling like this is a project that really needs to be done, and that Ryan has worked through with the consultant in doing the best that can be done with this project and sort of minimizing the impact. As was said, the pole is sort of the pole's fine in comparison, and which is what we're really voting on. But I do understand the concern, but I just don't know you know, even had we had more time and more input, whether there would be, you know, appetite to do something something different, given what's the need for what's going in here. So I don't know if others have thoughts.
Does the new pump differ markedly from the previous one, the present one? I mean, is the present one's underground, or is it in that rather modest size metal structure near the corner?
No, generally what you see is really our access hatch. That's it. Everything is underground.
It's underground.
Yeah, there's 2 wet wells and 1 big submersible pump chamber. And so there's in a station this big, you usually have 3 pumps, and you alternate between all 3. And so because it makes sense with the flows and not getting into pump curves or anything, these really lend themselves very well to a VFD, which is great for the town and great for energy consumption, because we can throttle those pumps up and down depending on the flow that we're getting, as opposed to turning the pump on, turning it off, turning it on, turning off. This one we can throttle up and down. So it's a huge energy savings. And we always look to put those in too when we can.
These are then the variable speed pumps?
Yes, yep, we call them VFD, variable frequency drives, yep.
But it will have, rather than manhole cover access, it will have an above ground structure with doors that enable you to get to a stairwell or something down to the pump level?
No.
No.
The only thing above ground that you'll see is anything that will be above grade would be the control cabinets, which will be black or whatever we want to do with them, and the generator enclosure. Everything else will be at grade level. So there'll be a concrete pad with a steel hatch, and that's how we get down. The whole point of this is for our guys not to go down into the stations anymore. Everything's above ground, and that's for OSHA reasons as well, and confined space entry. We don't want any of our workers going down into any enclosures anymore. It's just not, even with any of the safety protocols we have, it's just not something safe to do.
You speak of a generator, so does that imply it's a motor generator set? That is that the electric power powers a motor, which then generates current, which powers the pumps?
So the pumps will primarily run 365 days a year, barring any outage on electricity.
But
when the electricity in the event, what's that?
Do they draw power directly from the line, or do they draw it from a generator which draws power from the line?
No, they draw it directly from the power line.
So did I mishear the word generator? I thought I heard you use the word generator.
I did. We have an emergency generator. When the power goes out.
Yes.
For redundancy.
Absolutely, yes. When you need the pumps, you need power, and if you lose power, you're in deep doo-doo.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very short time for when it starts to back up and when it can start to overflow.
Yes.
All right. So any other thoughts on the item that's really in front of us, which is the pole and the scenic byway or scenic road decision?
I have no more comments.
I'm sorry, what'd you say? No more comments from you, Nick?
No comments. No.
All right. So we have a decision in front of us, right? Or not in front of us, but available.
Ryan, can you stop your screen share so we can?
Yeah.
And I'll pull up the decision.
All right, thank you.
So it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it captured as much detail as Ryan provided on the infrastructure and engineering today, but we tried to capture the summary of the application, and this decision does reflect that the utility pole triggers the scenic road application, while the sewer pump station was looking for more comment, which we certainly got tonight. I don't know if there's any further conditions that, kind of arose from this discussion that the board might feel is appropriate for this application.
I'd like to add the bit about adding a tree over, if feasible, understanding that there may be constraints, but adding another tree, I guess it'd be over on the Pine Ridge Road side, if it's feasible.
Anyone have any comments on the findings?
Can you zoom in a little bit there?
My only comment is I think you should probably remove that section you've already commented out or commented on, that we're not approving the wastewater pumping station, the fencing, the generator, or anything else. The only thing we're approving is the new pole.
I was wondering that now too, if we should just omit all this language of the sewer station.
Well, you can leave it in the findings.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it should be removed from the top where it says we the CBDC is requested by Verizon, da, 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 da. You've already highlighted and commented it's in purple, pink.
That makes sense. So make sure. Good catch. Good.
Yeah. And then I guess the only other condition, and I'll put it as Heather did, if feasible, reconfiguring the enclosure to allow for landscaping along the South Street frontage. All right.
All right.
Any other comments on this? No.
Is there any proposed plantings that, I mean, I'm concerned with using native species rather than foreign ones. In particular, Norway maple was once very popular, but I believe now it's recognized as non-native and verges on invasive. And so recommend that it not be considered as an option.
The plant, because it is in a park, the Parks Commissioner will dictate what the plantings will be. And the species. No invasive species will be used. They'll all be native.
Great.
Thank you, Ryan. So did someone want to make a motion?
Moved that the CPDC approve the scenic road decision for South Street utility pole and Sturgis Park at the Sturgis Park pump station as amended.
Second.
Second.
All right, Rachel seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's 5-0.
Heather's not just a concerned citizen, she's a member of the CPDC. Heather Klisch.
All right, thank you. And Jonathan, I understand the concerns. I
understand. I appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Yeah.
Understood.
And we'll take them to note, Jonathan. We'll try to soften it up as best we can.
Appreciate it, Ryan. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Heather Klisch, she still is with the
John.
Appalachian Mountain Club.
John.
John?
Yeah.
Oh, hi, it's Rachel. I'm
Hi,
gonna
I'm sorry.
sign off before the next item, okay?
Okay, great.
All right, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Can we take a 5-minute break? 3-minute break?
Sure. 3 minutes, so back at, I have that at 10:40.
Sure.
Sorry, Julie.
Thank you for sticking with us, Anne.
Don't apologize to me.
Oh, it's always interesting.
Hi, Anne. Oh my gosh.
Hi,
You're so
how are
good.
you?
Good. Just trying to survive 2020.
So the Sturgis Park project, I live 4 doors up from there, and I actually think it looks really nice. Aesthetically, I mean, I think the plantings and stuff will be nice.
Yeah, it'll look nice. I think that it's hard sometimes when it hasn't been there for a long time. Like that, the way it looks now, it's like, it's really quaint. It's been there forever and it blends in with everything. And, you know, it can be hard to visualize something different.
Yeah, it's nice. I mean, some things are necessary, I guess. You have to...
We were talking, South Street's a beautiful area of town. It's such a nice road.
It's so nice. I used to run along there all the time when I had time. And I would always run down South Street. It's so pretty.
I'm sure you don't have time anymore, Julie.
No time. Not a second. Not a second. How's your grandson?
He's awesome. Yeah, he's great. How's your daughter?
She's good.
Yeah.
She's 2.5. She's very much a 2.5-year-old.
Yeah, so like that's why, I mean, I've been here for 35 years on this street on Pine Ridge, and you know, brought my kids there and grew up there, and now I bring him there every week. So yeah. I love that park. We spend a lot of time there.
He must be about 2?
He just turned 2, yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, my daughter's very bossy. Like nothing's easy because she wants to do everything herself, which I love in theory.
I know what you're saying.
Such a struggle. Such a struggle.
It's a girl thing, I think.
Her new thing now is like hanging on my legs, so I like can't do anything. Literally. Like,
and you're home.
Yeah. Like she's just hanging on my leg. Just like because it's funny. Like laughing hysterically. Because she knows I can't do anything.
Because you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Control.
Mm-hmm. So it's fun. Till it's not.
Yeah, it's different from me because he's not mine. It's awesome. I mean, I can't see him enough, but they're having another one in the spring, so that'll change a lot.
Yeah. I don't know how or why people ever do that, but it's cool.
They love being home. They love working from home. They love being a little family unit that doesn't have to leave. They think it's great. I would really, if I were them with like, it would be hard for me, but they're very happy. Of course, they have me. They just drop them here.
Yeah, I mean that if they didn't have you, they might do that differently.
Yeah. I mean, not all the time. During COVID, I was helping more because I didn't have a lot of work, but now, you know, I have one day, which is good.
It's nice.
All right, we're waiting for Pam, right?
Appears that way.
All right.
Do you have a meeting after me too? I didn't see the second page. Oh, you do?
Good times never stop.
It's gonna roll into tomorrow.
I know. We all have to stay up for the election tomorrow.
CPDC all-nighter, is that what we're doing?
All right, let's move this along. Right, Ann?
Okay, thank you.
And I can share your proposal on screen if you want to summarize it.
Sure, I can't do it. I've never even used Zoom. So it's probably, yeah, that one's better because so this storefront, that's just a fake storefront right now, the brown area. I think they are putting some type of wood shiplap there. And she just wanted something very small. She didn't want to do a blade sign. And I did not design the logo, so I tried to use it so that she could, I don't know, I don't love the logo, but so what I decided to do was to make the halo gold leaf carved along with the inline to hopefully dress the sign up a little bit so that it didn't look so tiny and give it a little bit of life. She did obviously paint the door blue, so that's kind of why I pulled the blue onto the sign. It doesn't show up well in this layout, but I mean, you get the gist. It's sign foam. It's 1.5 inches thick, so I wanted it to be dimensional so that it would stand off the building a little bit and not be so flat. She may do something with the windows later, but for now, she just needs to have her logo there.
Let's pull back up the dimensions here.
Yeah, that space above the door is only like 28 inches or so. So we need to make it as big as possible to at least give it some type of, you know, presence.
Really too bad. It's like the perfect blade sign.
Right.
Right.
So you know what's funny is the business that was there before, it is the perfect blade sign, and she can do one later if she wants. But she didn't want to go for it now, and I explained that it would be easier to do it in the one permit. But I think she likes the idea of the windows. There was a blade sign on that building before, and I had done it for Belay, And when it was installed, the brick on that building, a little portion of it seemed to be a little bit crumbling. So we had to put it up. We had to kind of reaffix it once. And I think she just didn't want to deal with anything other than the store, the front of the store.
Sure.
I'll just pull up the C of A, which summarizes the short application, the dimensions, the material. It's non-illuminated. And then I tried to capture in conditions that if a blade sign is desired in the future, we can definitely do that, whether it's through the board or through admin approval, if possible, and
okay.
Same with windows.
Oh, I thought windows were,
So window signs aren't always subject to a sign permit.
yeah, 30% of the
Correct.
window. Yeah. Yeah, she's not looking, if she does, she's not looking to do anything crazy. She just maybe something simple, list services at the base of the window or something like that.
Anyone have any additions or comments?
This couldn't be more simple, Anne?
She's great. I'm telling you, sometimes you work with people and they're so easy. And I don't love the logo, like I said, but I know it's something very personal to her. So I didn't even, sometimes I have a conversation and say, this might look a little better, this might work a little better, but I didn't want to have that conversation with her because I know it's a very personal design.
So any comments from anyone? Questions?
No.
I don't see any.
All right. I feel bad, Anne, that you sat through all of that for.
Oh, you know, I had a couple glasses of wine and did my nails. No, I listened, actually. I listened into all this stuff. It is interesting sometimes.
Well, especially if you go to that park and that area and familiar, right, with that space there on Pun Ridge. So
your job's not easy.
Sometimes it's easier than others. Like this, right?
Well, good. Thank you.
So we are looking for a motion from someone. Anyone?
Move that the Cpdc approve the certificate of appropriateness for 85 Haven Street, RG Salon sign.
Second.
All right, all those in favor? That's 5, including Tony. So 5-0.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Anne. I'll get you this stuff as soon as I can.
Great to see you all. Take care.
Likewise.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you. Take care, Julie. Good luck.
You too.
I'm not sure how to.
All right. What's next?
We have an A&R plan. Next, right, Andrew? Probably.
We do, yes.
Yeah. So the A&R for 102 Haverhill Street.
Sorry.
Which we just got finalized today. So.
Let me share this. I don't see the applicant with us or their representative, so I'll do my best to summarize for them. We have Haverhill Street here, 60-foot public right-of-way, and here is what on the GIS right now is deemed as 0 Haverhill Street. and to become 102 Haverhill Street. This is the lot behind it, which is a majority of wetlands, and they are proposing to add a single family home at the lot of 102 Haverhill Street. But to do that, they need some additional land. The existing lot line was here. You can see that line going up here, and they are proposing under common ownership to adjust the lot lines to run straight and have this parcel be conveyed from the larger lot to the smaller lot. That would bring them in conformance with the S20 zoning requirements, I believe, and that's about it. I'm sorry that I don't have, that they aren't here to help answer any questions.
But then, well, I have two questions for you that maybe you or Julie can answer. Did Ryan, well, you said you just got this. Did Ryan look at it?
Yes, we got the plan a couple weeks ago, and we just had them make changes, and Ryan looked at it 2 different times.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I presume that he was okay with it.
Yeah.
So he now writes the memo with us.
Okay.
The memo is from both planning and engineering.
Okay.
I have here. I believe the conservation administrator who this house is going through the conservation process also looked at it and agreed that it conforms to what was discussed at the conservation hearings.
Yes, that's correct.
So does lot 2 need frontage?
So lot 2 is deemed a non-buildable lot on this note 5 here.
Yeah, that's a question I have actually, though. If you look at that note, it says not considered a building lot as opposed to a buildable lot. And is there a difference?
That's the term they usually use, actually.
Building lot? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They could say buildable lot too, but regardless, they're creating a lot that doesn't have adequate frontage, so it doesn't meet zoning.
There's a few roads up here, but none meet the required frontage requirements of the S20 zoning district. And I believe this lot is to be conveyed to the town in a future conservation restriction as well.
I think they're actually just going to deed it to the town under the care and control of the Conservation Commission.
Gotcha.
Slightly different process.
I think as long as that front lot has frontage and area, and the second lot is noted as not a building lot, that's all we need to know.
Right, that is all we need to know.
And the frontage for both lots isn't changing as well, so it's not changing what it is today.
This frontage exists today, yes.
All right. Questions? No. All right. So moving along. Anyone? Right. We need a motion to endorse, right?
Yes.
Move that the CPDC endorse the A&R for 102 Haverhill.
Okay, I'll second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Say aye.
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 All right, aye. That's 5-0.
And I just need 3 volunteers for the signature chain.
I'm here every day.
You might get a visit from one of your friendly Town of Reading staff members.
People are starving for human interaction.
That might be a 2-way street.
All right. Now what's next?
So we don't need to talk about zoning since it's almost 11.
Right.
And we have
and we're not going to do meeting minutes. That's a statement.
I did want to share with you 2 instructional motions that were submitted, I believe, last Friday to the town clerk for November town meeting. I'm not super familiar with the instructional motion process except for what I've seen in the last few years, but I'll just quickly get them and show you them. Oh, actually, I had them on my screen earlier, but I don't know where they went. Just get them. You know what? I'll show you what I'm doing. So if you want to look at them again after the meeting, you know where to find them. They're on the town website. If you go to departments, town clerk, and then scroll down to town meeting information, 2020 subsequent town meeting, which is November. And then there's instructional motion 2001. And the reason I'm showing these to you is because they involve the CPDC. Basically just a statement that gets made at town meeting, and a simple majority vote kind of makes it something that town staff have to figure out how to carry forward in the following year. So I'll just let you read it. You all see it?
Yep. So I know you, right, this is just instructional, which though if voted on, right, is something we need to implement. And I guess my question on this is, you know,
Well, John, hold on. If town meeting votes on the instructional motion, we're just required to address it and either prove that it doesn't work or agree, you know, find the answer to this question. We're not necessarily bound to reduce it to 85%, period.
Right. No, I agree with that. But the piece of it that I'm more concerned about in terms of the immediate repercussions is and that CPDC not approve any additional 40R developments in the district until town meeting has had the opportunity to review the 40R amendments. So I guess what I would want to know, right, if this passes, you know, what does that mean for us? What does that mean in terms of 40R developments that might already be submitted, or ones that are in the hopper, and our ability to move forward or entertain them, whether we would approve them or not. And so I think that's probably something, Julie, that you may want to get some input from town council, because if there are folks that are active, they'll want to know of the risk that they're walking into.
Sure. Yeah, I think that I just want to like clarify one thing here, and I need to talk to town council about this whole process in general, because I'm not really clear on like what it really means, but just a notion that you guys might bring 40R amendments to town meeting in the spring. Like, it's already November and you haven't even started the conversation, and public hearings would have to happen in January. And so I think maybe it's more likely that you would review the 40R zoning holistically, looking at this and parking and some of the other things that keep coming up, and bring something to town meeting in November 2021, which, you know, typically zoning bylaw amendments are done in November. So I would have to check and make sure that this wording here, if it were voted, didn't tie us to some spring town meeting deadline. But it would be my preference if we could talk about this more and like have a real full public process throughout the course of the next year and bring it to town meeting next fall. But to your point, right, anything that's coming in that's, you know, going forward using the existing zoning, we need to be aware that there might be some changes. So I can look into all that and the impacts of this on all that. So.
Would you be able to share what you learn with us in advance of town meeting, knowing that we can't have discourse, but any information that you have, can you send that to us?
Yep. Yeah. And, you know, we can talk about this. We have a special meeting for November 23rd to talk about the zoning changes that we are looking to bring to April town meeting. And I can like update you then, hopefully. And by that point, we will know how I mean, I'll get the answers sooner than town meeting, but by that point, we would know like what town meeting had voted on, whether they voted for this or not. So
it'd be interesting to know if it's the same rules as when we do other zoning changes, where once we notice the meeting, then it's sort of retroactive back to that date, right?
Yeah, I think it probably would be. I don't know why this would be different, but I will verify that. Yeah. Does that sound good?
Julie, speaking of that, can you check with Ray on chapter 48, section 5?
What about it?
From what I read, it said that the retroactiveness goes back to the vote at town meeting for zoning, not the notice.
Yeah, there's a lot of like information floating around about varying opinions on that, and there's some cases and stuff. And yeah, I can verify that for you, Tony, but I'll verify that.
Thank you.
I'm surprised, so I don't want to say that I know anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I make an observation about the language about this, and I guess ask a question as it relates to the open space and recreation plan? I'm noticing that the tie that's being made here to perhaps the opportunity to create pocket parks, pathways, and other open space options. I'm just wondering, is this something also where we could encourage people to give some input to the open space and recreation plan if there's interest in creating more pocket parks and open space options? Is that something within the purview of that plan?
Which purview? The purview of the plan?
The open space and recreation plan. Just a thought to kind of get people engaged if this is something that we want to see more of in general.
I mean, we can always ask for more engagement. I think I'm missing what the issue is with that you're.
Well, I'm just thinking, I'm seeing two components of this instructional motion. One is about the size of the buildings, the massive buildings, and another is seeing this as a tool to create pocket parks, pathways, and other open space options. And I guess I'm also wondering if we want to open the door to other ways to create pocket parks and trails. And one way might be having that represented in the open space and recreation plan and encouraging people to get engaged that way.
Okay.
It's late. I don't know if that was.
And no, I completely understand what you're saying, Heather, and like that, and think that's an effective or the appropriate forum for discussion on pocket parks is probably in open space planning, not necessarily in the 15% of lot coverage that's being identified here.
I think I'm following what you're saying now. Thanks. It's late. And
then the other one?
Sure.
Right, because the longer you leave this up, the more we're going to talk about it and get ourselves. Well, we don't want to, but we're also just going to get ourselves in trouble, right?
Yes. So here's the second one. Yeah, I'm sharing these to you like as things that came up that were unexpected before the meeting agenda was posted.
Right.
And under other business, we rarely ever have instances like this.
Short-term rentals.
Yeah.
This is for those that haven't been on the board as long as Nick and I. This has come up before, right, Julie? Right, I think you were here, right? We talked about this And I think purposefully decided at one point to put it to the side, just because I think because other things seemed more important at the time. So,
well, also to clarify, my memory of the last time we talked about short-term rentals, which I think was just last fall, maybe, like when we were talking about uses and things we might want to consider and talk about, was that the conversation about a policy around whether we want short-term rentals or not really needs to be, the conversation needs to be had at a higher level. Like it needs to be a broader community conversation than just something we decide in zoning. That was my memory. So
I don't recall that, but that that rings true to me.
So, and there's a lot baked into that. I did a lot of research last fall about short-term rentals. And there's a lot of stuff there. So I can dig it back out and we can talk about it. And we can try to have a bigger conversation, a bigger policy level discussion about that. So, sound good?
Great.
All right. And that's basically all.
That covers it, right?
Yeah, for instructional motions, yes.
All right. I
sent
think that
around a
covers
draft.
it.
I just want to say one more thing. I sent around a draft CPDC 2021 schedule, I think, to everybody.
No, I didn't get it.
I don't recall
Meant to
getting
send
it.
You thought about it.
I
It
sent
didn't leave your brain.
No, I revised the outdoor commerce dining programming and storage, and it was in that email because I was being strategic about your meetings in the winter and spring, and I think I sent the attachments together. 2 attachments, 1 email.
Yeah, you did. It's in
Okay.
the,
Yes, it's there.
Okay. I haven't totally lost it. Yeah, if you just want to take a look at that and let me know if you know of any conflicts or any problems that you foresee with that schedule. It's a little bit more robust than your current schedule because I think we're going to be quite busy. Just trying to get all these things going. So scheduled a few more meetings and some meetings as needed in the winter, just in case we're quite busy. So let me know what you think.
Looks fine to me.
Great. And that's all from me.
All right. I think that's all for all of us.
motion to adjourn?
Oh, second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone. Somehow we try and keep these short and they, here it is, 11 o'clock. So,
There was a lot on this one though.
This
so,
one was.
yeah,
All right.
maybe
All right.
next time.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, guys.